This meeting of the Carson City School Board to order. We'll note that all trustees are present, including Trustee Cassiopo. He is participating remotely via speakerphone, so he will have an opportunity to talk. Agenda item 1, adoption of the agenda as submitted for possible action.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Trustee Walker and a second by Trustee Walt. Is there any further discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. The agenda is adopted. We'll move on to agenda item 2, flag salute. Trustee Cassiopo is participating remotely, so I've asked Trustee Clapham to lead us in the flag salute. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 3, superintendent's report for information only. Mr. Fueling.
Thank you, President Crossman, trustees. To the public, welcome here tonight. We have a couple introductions and recognitions to do this evening. Some great successes in the district. First, we have the Carson High State Wrestling Champion, Ella Olson, along with some coaching staff. I think Coach Nick Redwine is here. Yep, go right ahead. Just hit the button at the top.
Yeah, the microphone helps to record it for our minutes.
Sorry, I'm not playing on my phone. I wrote what I was going to say down on my phone. So, good evening, board members and guests. My name is Nick Redwine. I'm the head coach of the wrestling at Carson High School. I'm here tonight to give an overview of this year's wrestling season and to introduce a very special member of our team. This season, our team compiled an 11-7 overall dual record. We finished with a 5-3 regional record in Northern Nevada. We placed 6th at the regional tournament and 17th at the state tournament. We had 10 state qualifiers, 8 boys and 2 girls. We will be returning 13 varsity lettermen next season. 3 will be seniors, 9 will be juniors, and 1 sophomore. Out of our 10 state qualifiers, 7 will be returning, including 1 regional runner-up. So that kind of covers how the season went. Now I'd like to introduce a very special member of our team, Ella Olson, senior. Ellie, come up here and stand so everybody can see you. Come over here. This is Ella, senior. Ella came to us from Colorado and wrestled for us for 2 seasons. It would have been 3 if COVID hadn't gotten in the way. When Ella joined our team, she was already an accomplished wrestler. We could tell right away that she had a firm understanding of the sport and an extensive repertoire of technique. We were able to get Ella in a couple of all-girl tournaments as a junior where she placed well, including the all-girl invitational tournament at season's end in Las Vegas, which was the first for the state of Nevada. Ella wrestled well and was able to place 2nd. This year, working closely with her parents, Brian and Rachel, we were able to put together a much more competitive schedule. She wrestled in 4 regular season all-girls tournaments in Nevada, California, and Idaho, placing 2nd in the Sierra Nevada Classic in Reno, the Mid-Cals Tournament in Gilroy, California, and the Raleigh Lane Invitational in Nampa, Idaho. She also placed 1st in the Reno Tournament of Champions this year, earning herself the status of high school All-American. Once the postseason started, Ella didn't slow down. She placed 1st in Northern Nevada Girls Division Regional Tournament at McQueen High School. She absolutely dominated her bracket and moved on to the state tournament seeded 1st. In Winnemucca, at the first ever NIAA sanctioned all-girls state championships, Ella continued her stellar senior season, battling through a pretty substantial knee injury to win a state title at 152 pounds. She finished the season with an overall record of 18 wins and 3 losses. Ella has always been a very coachable, hard-working teammate. She has been a joy to coach and will be missed when she graduates. She was always ready to jump into the boys' lineup whenever we needed her with very little complaining. She has also been a member of the girls' golf team at CHS for the last several years and does great things on the course as well. She is an outstanding student and has one of the highest GPAs at Carson High School. I believe she is planning on attending UNR to study engineering. I'm very proud to have coached her, and I have no doubt she will continue in success in whatever field she chooses in life. Thank you.
Oh, great. Do we have any questions from the board or comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm very, very impressed with you. Great record, great season. Everybody up here is very proud of you, and I know Carson High School, you represented them very well, and I know you'll go on to do great things. You're a super young lady. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks so much for coming, and I'm glad that you let us know that what her plans were after high school. That's kind of something we like to hear what our seniors are planning, and I hope you're also applying for scholarships at UNR. If your GPA is that high, you probably are going to be able to do pretty well on scholarships up there.
Yeah, I've been applying.
Great. Thank you so much. Sure. Wrestlers, Mr. Davis has asked for a photo, so if you guys all want to stand in front of the board right here, you could do that. Thank you all for coming and supporting your teammates. This is awesome.
All right. Congratulations, Alan. Next, we have Mr. Frank Sacalarius to tell us about a rather successful event. It all works, wherever you want.
And for any reason, if parents want to come up here and take a picture, you're more than welcome to come up here.
Mr. Fueling, board members, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Frank Sacalarius. I am one of the HOSA advisors at Carson High School. We took 59 students to our state conference a couple weeks ago up in Reno, where our students competed in 16 different events. At that conference, we were able to qualify 29 of our students to the International Leadership Conference, which will take place in June in Dallas, Texas. In addition to that, our chapter received the bronze medal, which is we are the third largest HOSA membership in the state of Nevada with 265 members. And we received a gold medal for having 100% of our health science students at Carson High School are also HOSA members. We're the only chapter in the state that has that award. At this time, what I'd like to do is there's a couple of students who aren't here, so I'm going to tell you what events they were in and how they placed, and then I'll let the students introduce themselves and do the same. So in our healthcare issues exam, Jeanette Ars Garcia, Alicia Cortez Solis, Mackenzie Fernandez, Irene LeBlanc, Vielka Lopez, Kate Lucas, Andrea Manriquez, Riley Patterson, Olivia Van Reese-Roaring, and Macy Wilson all qualified to nationals in the healthcare issues test. And that test is a test that the students have to pay attention to what's going on in the world and pay attention to news reports and do their own reading and paying attention. And it's a test that you really can't study for. They show up and they take that test, and then based on how they do, places them to nationals. In our health science events, Macy Wilson placed 5th in behavioral health as well. Bennett Card placed 4th in dental terminology. Alicia Cortez Solis took 2nd place in nutrition. Riley Patterson took 4th place in pathophysiology, all qualifying to go to nationals. In our health profession events, Olivia Van Reese-Roaring took 2nd place in home health aid and will be going to nationals. Irene LeBlanc took first place in physical therapy. And at this point, those are the students who aren't here, so I'll let our students introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paulina Perez Roque, and I was a state finalist in healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon. My name is Julissa Rodriguez Alonso, and I placed 5th in pathophysiology. Pathophysiology.
Good afternoon. My name's Aiden McBride, and I qualified for nationals, and I placed first in sports medicine.
Good afternoon. My name is Sierra Key, and I qualified for nationals by taking the healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Dunlap Martin, and I qualified for nationals in the healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon. My name is Maritza Alvarez, and I got first in home health aid, and I qualified for nationals.
Good afternoon. My name is Kaylee Luna, and I took the healthcare issues exam and I qualified for nationals.
Hello, my name is Maria Benchuk. I got first place in the nutrition. Hello, my name is Maria Benchuk, and I got first place in the nutrition health science event.
Good afternoon. My name is Roberto Juarez, and I qualified for nationals, I think. And I placed 5th in nutrition.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Davis, and I qualified for nationals with the healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Ostenbach, and I qualified for nationals through the healthcare issues exam and placing 2nd in medical law.
Good afternoon. My name's Tara Barman. I placed 2nd in the medical terminology test, and I placed in the healthcare issues exam.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Gutierrez, and I placed with the healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon. My name is Vikram Chahal, and I placed with the healthcare issues exam.
Good afternoon, my name is Vanessa Diaz, and I placed 3rd place for CPR and first aid with my partner Dylan.
Hello, I'm Dylan Cooley. I placed 3rd place in CPR first aid with my partner Vanessa Diaz.
Those are all of our national qualifiers. I'd like to say thank you for your support in our program and what we've done. Couple other things that I'd like to also say is Irene LeBlanc is a new state officer for us from our chapter. She will be our state HOSA state treasurer for the state of Nevada. Thank you. Any questions?
Trustee Walker?
So Frank, I just want to say good job again on coaching all these kids. Congratulations to all of our finalists. And one of the things I love about this meeting is you have to wear a suit and come to a school board meeting. So you don't get to tease me. Congratulations, guys. Seriously, we're proud of you all.
I also want to say congratulations to all the students and thank you for your leadership and for coaching these kids. And, you know, you guys are representing our district very, very well. So, and also congratulations to the parents. I'll say it in Spanish too, since we have a diverse group of families here. Felicidades, padres. Sigan apoyando a sus hijos, so continue supporting your children. And thank you for coming to this meeting. We hope to see you come back. We want you guys to join us at future meetings, so thank you for being here.
Hi, Laurel, this is Joe. Can I say something?
Sure. Joe can talk.
Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks. I just wanted to congratulate the students as well and extend my appreciation to Frank and the staff. It's really a big accomplishment, and it's hard to believe it was that long ago, but my son was involved in it, as was one of my daughters. And Frank, my son now is getting ready to graduate in August from PA school, and he owes his initial introduction to sports med and whatnot to this program. It's a great opportunity for these students, and I just want to say thanks for everything you're doing and the support the whole district gives to it.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations and good luck at nationals. Mr. Saccaloris, is there any fundraising that they need to do to earn their way to nationals? And is there a way that we can advertise that to help support them?
Yes, there will be fundraising that they need to do in order to pay their way to nationals. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. We're still just getting back from state and trying to get our feet settled and get back into this. And if there is a way that you can help, we'll definitely be asking. I also know some of the travel will be paid for through grants and some of the fundraising we've done in the fall as well.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Great job, you guys.
Okay, continuing on. We have with us this evening the new Carson City School District Director of Operations, Mr. Steve West.
Still not working? It's working? Okay. Good evening, board, guests. Steve West, Director of Operations for this amazing school district. Super honored. Originally born and raised San Antonio, Texas. Served U.S. Army, retired. Got to work at Waste Management as a Senior Operations Manager for 4 years. In between Waste Management, my last company, I had about 6 months of substituting to help out the community in Washoe County. Loved every bit of it. Fell in love with the school system, the staff. Super blessed to be a part of this school district as well. You know, I'm very process improvement. Very focused on ensuring that our staff and students are safe and sound and coming to school and enriching our community day in and day out. So that's my goal, is to support this amazing school district. I have the privilege to work with Spencer and AJ, and super blessed. I wouldn't be here without my beautiful wife, Jill. I just want to throw a shout out to her. She's so shy. So, pending any questions, thank everybody here. Really appreciate this time. Thank you.
Yeah, just welcome aboard, and good to have another Army guy here.
All right, I like it.
We got Joe, myself, and you now.
Army guy, we're happy to have another substitute teacher.
I still have my my license. So, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Thank you for coming, and thank you for supporting him.
All right, thank you, Steve. Couple other items, some more successes. So Carson High School's Thespian Troupe 5180 took 7 students to the state thespian competition in Las Vegas last weekend and had great success. 3 of our students received superior scores on their competition performance pieces, qualifying them for international thespian competition. Rebecca Huey, Natalie McGuire, and Waylani Ronk. One of our students, Rebecca Huey, was selected to perform her piece in the state showcase for all the thespian troops. She was the only student from a Northern Nevada school who performed. We are so proud. All 3 of our superior scoring thespians will be performing in our spring production of Carrie, the musical, playing April 14th through the 16th. And that is all for that one. Congratulations to their teacher, Darby Beckwith. Another celebration. So NJROTC at Carson High School had their annual military inspection by a captain from NAS Fallon. And I wouldn't normally read the entire thing, but I think it's pretty exceptional. Carson High School NJROTC is the most exceptional NJROTC unit I have seen. The program is extraordinarily well managed. The support it receives from the school is unparalleled. Furthermore, it is located in an economically diverse area of town where this level of participation would not have been immediately expected. Carson NJROTC is absolutely a wellspring for future recruiting and community outreach on behalf of the U.S. Navy in a location where you would least expect it. Yet it is highly needed given the relative proximity to NAS Fallon, a strategic training base for carrier wings, Top Gun instructors, and Navy SEALs. Finally, the cadets themselves were emblematic of the citizen sailors we want to develop as a country. They are future community leaders who reflect all of the aspirations you hope to see in our high school youth. They are committed to each other and clearly value fair treatment for all. They have logged an impressive level of community service hours and continuously seek ways to expand their reach as a student organization through athletics, STEM, and community service. Captain Shane Taylor from NAS Fallon. So I thought that was pretty impressive. I'm sorry that was Navy with my Army folks here, but hopefully we can all get along.
That's okay.
And just last item, looking at kindergarten registration and just noting that first day of school next year is August 14th. And so those kindergarten students seem to be 5 years old on or before that first day of school. And more information is available at carsoncityschools.com. And lastly, happy Pie Day. Thank you.
Thanks for the pie day. I had a chicken pot pie in the oven for my kids to eat. So we're celebrating that. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, board reports and board member comments. Carson High School, I see Ava Schofield here.
Hi, my name is Ava Schofield, and so we do have a few announcements today from the high school. So first off, we have our senior academic letter ceremony tomorrow night from 6:30 to 7:30 in the North Foyer, and it's more of a ceremony, whereas the one in the fall was just a grab and go with your academic letter. And so we're super excited to recognize all of our seniors who achieved that. And then next, our prom is coming up soon, and that also includes the friendship ball and the father-daughter dance. And so the friendship ball is for all the special needs kids that attend Carson High, and it's on Thursday, April 20th. And then the father-daughter dance is for the community, and it's on Friday, April 21st. And I'm not sure on the time yet, but I'll let you guys know sooner. And then Choir Palooza is this Thursday at 7 o'clock at the high school gym. I think it's for all the choirs in the city. I don't know. I think, yeah. And then obviously we had our wrestlers do great at state. We're super proud of them. And HOSA did great at their state competition. And then the Thespians did great at their state competition. And then Carrie the Musical is being put out by the Carson High musical theater class. And it's sold out. So we're super proud of them for that, for selling out. And we're excited to go see it. And that's all that I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Ava, for your report.
Thank you.
And do we have a representative from Pioneer Academy here tonight? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to a report from the Nevada Association of School Boards update. Trustee
Yeah, for
Barnard.
the members of the public, last Friday, NASB hosted a day at the legislature for trustees from throughout the state. Unfortunately, the floor committee meetings were canceled. However, we had several assemblywomen come in and give us a talk. And then the chief of staff for the governor, Ben Kekeffer, also came in, and he spoke about the governor's educational budget and what they want to accomplish. And then some of the trustees also took a tour of the building. And then President Crossman was able to arrange a tour of the new Eagle Valley Middle School and their new addition there. And quite a few trustees from throughout the state attended that. And they all seem to be pretty impressed with the school and the new addition. So It was a good time that afternoon. And then on Saturday, NASB also hosted a training conference or training class for trustees throughout the state. And it was on negotiations and bargaining, employer relations. And in the afternoon, then we had a class on financial management, which Stuart, you were there. And so it was a very good training class. And the next training class is going to be held on April 29th in Fallon from 9 to 5, and it's going to be on digital threat assessment. So that's the update from NASB.
Thank you, Trustee Varner. At this time, we'll go ahead and do board reports, and we'll just start with you, Trustee Varner.
Sure. For Boardrick Bray, they'd like to let everybody know that Wednesday, which is tomorrow, they're having their Bingo for Books night from 5:30 to 7. They'll be selling pizza and a drink for $2 a person, and students who attend will receive splash points. And they hope to see all their families at this fun event to help promote reading. The next Tuesday, on March 21st, they'll be celebrating a Nevada Moves Month. All students will have an opportunity to learn about fitness and to compete some fun action stations. And they wanted to thank the Muscle Powered and Public Works for help with the event and providing books to all students as well. They are excited to be promoting both physical and mental strength and wellness with their students. They also want people to know that parent conferences are coming up on March 30th and 31st. These will be group conferences held at different times based on grade level. And there'll be announcements coming out through Parent Square to let everybody know what times these are going to be held. And their goal is to have 100% of the families attend these important meetings to better understand student progress and resources that are available. And then finally, they're having Boardrick Bray Day at the ACES on Sunday, April 30th at 1:05 p.m. Their choir students will be singing the national anthem. So that's really exciting. Tickets are on sale now, and the link to purchase these went out via Parent Square, or you can call the school for more information. And that's my report for Boardwick. And then from Fritz Elementary, they would like to report that their archery team placed 4th in the state. The team had to shoot against middle school and high school students, and 3 students have qualified to shoot at the National Shoot in Salt Lake City. So they wanted to wish them good luck in the future shoots. And that's my report from Fritz. And also, I'd just like to take the time to thank Fremont Elementary for allowing me to come in and read to the first graders there, Mrs. Horrigan's class. I got to tell you, these little first graders had so many questions about what a school board member does. And I was really quite surprised that they had such good questions. And I really enjoyed having the opportunity to read to the young kids. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Trustee Walt.
So I was reading the report from the high school, but again, it would be reiterating everything that just happened this afternoon or this evening. And so Mr. Chambers was, grateful and appreciative, congratulatory towards all of the groups that were here this evening as well. I did visit the school, walked, the halls, and so I look forward to the presentation that is coming up with agenda item number 8, the concerns that are, voiced as well. So because it was quite intimidating actually, walking during nutrition break. So that was the high school, but then, and unfortunately I have not, between my family emergency, Mr. Tuttle being ill for some time, I have not been able to meet up with Mr. Tuttle at Empire.
Thank you. Trustee Walker.
Well, one of the nice things about Trustee Varner pointed out that you set up that tour of Eagle Valley, and I think we also need to commend Lee because with very short notice, he represented Carson City well and really showed off Eagle Valley, and he made me proud of the school district and the work he's doing at that school. So thank you to him. He also was pretty excited. They are continuing on with their MTSS implementation, and so they've implemented the PBIS reward system, and they're working with students, staff, and trying to find some incentives to inspire the kids. And it sounds like they have a few things in the works. And then I'll apologize now because he told me last week next Wednesday is the dance. And I don't know if he means tomorrow or, well, Mr. Wallace, is it tomorrow or the Wednesday after?
It's tomorrow.
It
It's
is
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
I have two kids that are.
Thank you.
ready to
So
go there, so.
tomorrow is a dance from 5:30 to 7, and he hopes to see everybody there and celebrating the great things happening at Eagle Valley. And then, contrary to Spencer's belief, I did not leave the NASB training because he was going to be presenting. I actually went to a civics action forum at the museum, and it allowed middle school and high school kids to interact with elected officials. And so they had a panel for state elected officials, and then I was part of a panel for local officials. And we had a few concerned Carson High School students. And so one young lady was talking to me about social emotional concerns and preparation for finals and not being able to fully prepare. And so I've kind of coordinated somebody to help her maybe finesse that into some kind of policy or something we could look at here. And then two of our students were concerned about the traffic on Salomon and getting in and out during those high peak times. And so, Mr. Fueling, you don't know this, but I'll be getting in contact with you and coordinating you with some of those kids. And maybe we could get these kids to truly be active in the civics of this community. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Clapham.
I have a, excuse me, a couple reports. Carson Middle School first. They're going to begin SBAC testing in the next few weeks. They're taking a different approach this year. Instead of doing all the tests in 1 week, they're going to be spreading it out one per week, and this will hopefully allow each student to be able to focus a little bit more and not get burned out so much. They're going to be addressing some of the concerns with some of the student behaviors that's been going on and utilizing resources that are available to them and educating students through the encore classes. And they are now collecting feedback from 8th graders regarding the 8th grade promotions, and the parent survey is now closed. So, and then from Mark Twain, they're working on next year's schedule and planning many of the end of the year experiences for the students. They're going to be having family bingo night coming up on March 25th from 6:30 to 7:30. And lastly, reading week went really well. All of the students met their reading goals, and so that means Mr. Radina and Miss Crookshanks will be kissing a real live cow this Thursday. So that should be interesting. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Ramirez.
Okay, from Silliger Elementary School, I met with Ms. Sona, and they are finishing makeup testing for GOGAT this week. And this test is used to identify students who will be eligible for the GATE program. And I asked her to educate me a little bit about how they choose the students that go into the GATE program. And I'm going to share what I learned with you because I think it's important to have that reminder. So they test any student who scores 80th percentile or above on fall or winter maps. They can also test any EL student who grew 1.5 points on access testing. And parents can also request to have their children tested if they feel that their children are eligible for that program. Then next week they will begin their spring map testing for all K through 5th They postponed the Leprechaun Chase last Friday because of obvious reasons. They will schedule an event in the spring, and hopefully we'll have better weather. And they look forward to the choir palooza, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, this Thursday evening, 7 p.m. at Carson High School. And then I also had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Christine Lennox from the director of, she's the director of student support services. And she informed me about the variety of programs that they have. I was very impressed. They have programs from, from pre-K all the way up through to students that have individualized education program. Just very, very impressive programs that they run there. I even invited her to come and talk to, or do a presentation to the board, because there's a variety of programs that she oversees, and I think it would be very nice for the community to know how we are serving all students. So hopefully we will see her come in the near future. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Casiopo on the speakerphone, do you have a report tonight?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is weird. I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis and I have to go home early to sleep or something. Hey, so I do apologize for not being there. I'm at work conference. That's why I'm not there in person. But my report is for Pioneer. And Principal Zona wanted me to let everybody know that 2 JAG students competed in Las Vegas at the Career Development Conference. He had 26 students that were inducted into the National Honor Society on February 22nd. They had 2 speech and debate students that competed at the National Qualifying Tournament in Reno. 32 students attended a science field trip to a water treatment plant. And I attend those regularly, and they're quite the hoot. The Positive Vibes program continues to gain in numbers. Each week, staff notes students who've gone above and beyond and increased the positive vibes of Pioneer Academy or in the community for the week. To date, they've celebrated 185 positive actions. And I just want to say, in light of what you hear on the news and whatnot, anytime you can get students to participate and contribute in a positive way, which quite frankly are most of the students, that's a success. So I'm real happy with what Pioneer's doing. Anyway, congratulations to Pioneer. That concludes my report on Pioneer. I just wanted to reiterate that even though the weather didn't work out for us for that NASB legislative day, I think it was a good experience. It's a nice opportunity to walk through the halls, meet with some of the people, again, hear from the governor's chief of staff, and just have a little FaceTime with anybody, any of the lawmakers and executive folks that you can speak to. So that combined with the training we did on Saturday, particularly that training on NRS 288, I thought was real valuable for us. And then the EVMS tour, I think like Trustee Walker said, Principal Conley kind of pulled that together real quick at the request of, I believe, President Crossman. And I just wanted to thank him and his staff. They gave us a pretty complete tour of the school, showed us the existing grounds, the new improvements, and it really was quite impressive. I think it's quite a spectacular improvement to Eagle Valley Middle School. That's a great opportunity, for the staff and the kids to enjoy. And that's my entire report. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Casiopo. And for my report, I would just like to also thank Mr. Fueling and Mr. Davis because arranging that tour that morning, it was about 6:30 in the morning when I thought we have nothing to do. Maybe we can go to one of our schools. And so they didn't complain when I texted them that early. And Mr. Conley did a great job in setting that up. And one of our retired teachers who's a board member in Lander told me if she had the opportunity to teach in a building like that, she'd consider coming back to teaching. And I offered her a job, but it's a bit of a commute. I'm joking about that part. I didn't really, but we do need people. Also, I'd like to thank Fremont Elementary School. I participated in Reading Week on Tuesday of last week since it was postponed. And those kids did have fabulous questions, and they know now all of my children and pets and my hardest decision and easiest decision on the board. They were fantastic. So, report from Dr. Ward. She would just like to thank all the members of the community who came for Reading Week and made it so successful, and those who were willing to be scheduled, rescheduled, and even rescheduled another time because of all the snow days. And they love creating the excitement of reading at home and at school. And also, they are scheduling conferences for the end of the month, and they hope parent-teacher conferences, and they hope they have a high attendance rate. And that concludes my. Oh, yes.
Can I say one thing? One thing that I've nearly forgot about, and another great student celebration, I think, and an opportunity for anyone to go see this. So you are familiar with our student at Carson High School, Stella Thornton. She's presented to us previously about traumatic brain injuries and the impact of those. And she participated in the Nevada Youth Legislature over the past months. And so that's taking kids from all over the state to represent the Senate districts of the state. And her bill, everyone within that gets to propose a bill. And she had a bill that with students that have like concussion or a traumatic brain injury, there's existing expectations for returning to sports, but not necessarily for returning to the classroom. And so her bill was centered around that return to the classroom. And her bill made it through that Nevada Youth Legislature. So hers was the one chosen. And by being selected, that becomes a bill that is then presented to the legislature. And her bill, Senate Bill 80, will be presented tomorrow at 2 p.m. In the Senate Committee on Education at room 2134. So if you have nothing to do and you'd really like to get up to the legislative building and see all the hustle and bustle, you can go there and support Stella in that process.
Thank you for that update. I was just going to ask if you had the hearing date, and you do, date and time. So congratulations to Stella as well. And that concludes our board reports and announcements. We'll move on to agenda item 5, association reports for discussion only. Seeing none, we have no association reports today. We'll move on to public comment. I didn't receive anyone who turned in a paper. We did receive an email public comment, and that is included in the board packet as part of our record. I will not read it, but everyone has the opportunity to read it as that. Do I see anyone here who is here to make general public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm not going to read the paragraph, and I will go ahead and move on to agenda item 7, which is discussion, including without limitation, an informational update on the Carson City Schools Foundation and possible action to approve proposed amendments to the bylaws of the Carson City Schools Foundation. For possible action, Mr. Steve Reynolds and Mrs. Casey Gillis. Welcome back, Steve.
I'm Steve Reynolds. I'm the president of the Carson City Foundation for probably another year. When do those new terms expire? Because I know.
For you, never. No,
Yeah. No.
Next year, some do. I'm
Yeah.
not sure
And
which
with me,
ones.
of course, retired educator, principal, and very well known and respected around Carson City, Casey Gillis, who is our secretary.
Treasurer.
Pardon?
And treasurer.
And treasurer, and many other, that's right. Split the duties. So, just a quick prelude. About 27 years ago, 26 years ago, when I moved to Carson City, I was very active in the Chamber of Commerce. And we had 2 committees at that time. One was the Education Committee, one was the Manufacturers Committee, and I attended meetings of both and got to know the business people involved. And what was interesting at that time was that to a person in both committees, they felt a desire to support the schools in the community. What was also interesting at that time, but not in the same positive way, was that it was very frustrating for them because there were not easily understood pathways to support the schools from the public sector. And today we have a strategic plan. We have community involved, hundreds of volunteers, businesses and organizations that support things like STEM classes. It's a long ways from 26, 25 years ago when it was very hard for teachers and business people and organizational people to even have time for conversation. And it's a real pleasure to be part of that. And the foundation is a growing part of that. And we're trying to do more of what wasn't perhaps quite as available then, and build more bridges between people in the community who would like to support the schools through financial support of programs that the general fund cannot support, and through just knowing how many of the good things that are going on in our schools. So, Renee, do we, okay. Casey, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, it's just,
Oh, do
it's
I do
such
it
a
from
pleasure
here?
to be able to, the more we
Okay,
do,
got it, Renee, thank you.
the more people know about us, and seems like every little step we take just makes it better for the
Great.
next people
Okay,
who need
thank you.
help. I'm looking tonight at some of the kids wanting to go to nationals, and maybe we can be a way to help them. Let them know about how to go about asking for some help, and that's our job. You need help, we're
That's
gonna
okay,
get
we
you the
can
help.
use that. Great. Okay, so we've got a quick presentation for those here and those who may be watching. The Carson City Schools Foundation, we are funding achievement and access for our students. And we'll talk a little bit more about access later. We're going to give you a brief background. We're going to talk about some of the programs, our financial position, and our campaign, fundraising campaign for this year. A little background, we're actually supposed to be coming to you once every year and giving a report like this, and we've missed some of the years, and that's probably as much my fault as anyone's. Pardon? You probably didn't miss us, so
Just blame COVID.
COVID, yes.
there we go. How much longer do we get to blame COVID for? Yeah. We have a great board. It gets better every year as more people retire from the school district. We managed to bend Valerie Dockery and Richard Stokes' arms to join the board, and we have some really, really good knowledge of how the district works and what the district could use. We meet every month. We are very transparent. We spend very little of the money given to us on any type of operational costs. We review proposals to us and offer financial support to programs that are valuable to our students and valuable to our teachers. I've mentioned these before, but the more people supporting our extra programs in our school district by donating to it does more than just provide a financial support, but it also creates more interest by people and entities in the community about what goes on in schools. Remember many, many years ago, Glenn Adair, when he was principal, made the comment that, we have more people in one building than any other entity in this community. And he said, you know how tough it is to get the average people, to come in and see what we've got going on here? And had a personal challenge to get more people involved and understand what goes on in our school district. And we're much better now with that also. Some of the things that we support, we have individual student grants for things like school-related fees and expenses where the student or the student's family just can't find, needs the help. In a very private method, we have applications that are reviewed by the teacher, counselor, coach, and they can find funding for us for simple things. We also, the foundation also offers what we call mini grants, which are, in the past have been 200, they're now 300. They'll probably grow again, but it is our grant program that teachers can apply for every year. This year, for various reasons, we did not receive anywhere near the applications we expected. So we took our mini grant money that was left and offered a $1,000 grant to every elementary school and the 2 middle schools if they would supply us with a project. Let's go back and catch the rest of that. We offer department grants for substantial products and school grants to fund site-wide projects. We're doing special program fundraising for this will be our 3rd year. 2 years ago, we raised $16,000 to support books and materials for the Jumpstart program. There were some grants that were able to buy books and materials. Those grants, like seems they always do, had a sunset to them. Books and materials can cost anywhere from $100 to $300 or more for a student in the Jumpstart program. And so for many families, that's a big challenge to raise that kind of money. So there were a lot of students that were not taking part in the Jumpstart program without the funding, formerly by the district and now by the foundation. This year, we were approached late last year and made a commitment to raise funds to help pay for the cost of AP course testing. Those tests, I believe they're all $95 each now. If you've got a couple students in your family taking AP courses and they want credit for those courses, they have to take the test. And it'd be very easy for a family to be pacing, just under $400 to just under $600 in just the test cost. So we agreed to raise money this year to help support the AP testing courses, tests for students that needed that help. Our funding comes from individual business and organizational contributions. They come from employee contribution, payroll contributions from employees of the school district. We've been very happy with their contributions and how much support we've gotten them through all the years. The other thing we want to bring up, if you or your associates are considering making a difference with the youth and education in our school district, we ask you to consider supporting the foundation's programs. And in a moment, I'll show you the way to contact us. Here's our current financial position. Thank you, Renee, for making the changes, by the way. Our balance as of last week was $110,000 and change. We have liabilities of the dedicated funds that are held for the Jumpstart program that we raised last year. And then we have available to use in grants or, spend on our needed projects in the district of $77,216.59. Any expenditures by the foundation are reviewed and approved by our foundation board. Our campaign this year for fundraising is called Funding Future Dreams. Our annual giving campaign, we kicked it off on the 1st. We've gotten some publicity this week. Thank you to Mr. Davis with a couple of the television stations. And there's been some articles out in the newspaper and on Carson Now. We expect this to be a very successful campaign. Our goal is $60,000 with $20,000 to each of our grants, the AP support program, and the Jump Start. In the next week to week and a half, we'll also have a very exciting announcement to make. I wish I could talk about tonight, but there's some things involved that we need to clarify a little bit. But it'll be a big step for the foundation and a big part of this campaign this year. With our community support, we'll continue to grow and increase our support for our district students. For anyone who is interested, they can go to our website at ccschoolsfoundation.org and find out more information about the campaign, more information about the foundation and the things we support. And also, there is a way that you can make a contribution on the website to our kids and our education system here in our district. With that, we're open to any questions.
Just before the board asks, I did receive advice from our legal counsel prior to the meeting that we aren't going to be taking any action on the approving proposed amendments because they need to bring that back to us. So this is really a discussion item, and we'll bring that back at another time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've got a couple more legal steps to take that we weren't aware of, so we'll get those done.
But if there are any other questions, Trustee Varner.
Not so much a question, but I just want the public to understand that the board members work on a volunteer basis, and having been the representative for the school board last year, I was really just impressed with the amount of work you guys do and the good intentions you have. And you guys are doing a great job, and just wanted to thank you for your work, because I know you work hard and you do it for the kids, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the members of the board are very dedicated. There's no, well, no, there is. We get lunch once a month, but you know, they're all volunteers, and many of them put in quite a few hours every month.
Trustee Walt.
Thank you. I think you answered my question once a month. I was going to ask how often you meet, but I'm assuming you get lunch at a meeting?
Yes, we
Yeah.
do get lunch at the meeting,
Right.
so.
Well, and that's the least that you could get. So thank you for your time. I am so excited to see, you know, that you are getting the publicity for the foundation and, you know, the good works that you're doing. I think the Jump Start program is extremely important, and that funding for that is extremely important, as well as we all know that teachers put in a whole lot of money into their classrooms. So whatever you can do to help them support that is great. And Casey, I love the idea of, you know, student grants, you know, for these different activities, because it is costly. You know, I've had kids in HOSA, I've had them in FBLA, and they've traveled, you know, throughout the state, and it gets very, very costly, the hotels and the travel and the food. And so anything that you can do to help support that so it doesn't keep kids from wanting to participate, I think would be great.
And we've streamlined it so, yes, we don't just get an application. It comes through the counselor or the athletic director, whoever, who checked with the parents, yes, you want them to apply. But then the application itself is minuscule, so that it basically, if they need the help, we can help them. You know, if they've made the effort to have that achievement, you don't want them to sit home and not get recognized for it. So all our grants, we've tried to streamline them so that yes, there's accountability, but it doesn't become a 3-week project for somebody.
I just want to echo Trustee Walt's comments on how appreciative we are of your support to remove that financial barrier for our students to be able to take advantage of those amazing programs that the district offer for those students that are ready to advance in their education. So thank you for all that support that you provide to our students and to their families. And I would love to see how the parents are notified about these opportunities, because I think that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. We need to disseminate this message to the parents so that they know that that financial barrier is taken care of.
Very good comment. The thing that keeps coming up, and visited with someone who has earlier today with someone who has a lot of history in the funding and fundraising business, and the potential in the community that exists because of how many businesses and organizations and individuals are willing to help, and we've just not made contact with them. But I see the foundation and the district, I don't want to say unlimited potential, but we've barely touched the opportunity here. So anyway.
And I just, as we're giving thank yous, I think we need to recognize too that a great deal of our funding comes from the employees of this school district. Almost $10,000 a year, because they've made the commitment to have money deducted from their payroll or from their paycheck. And it's across the board. It is as many classified employees as certified and administration. We have bus drivers and cooks and teachers and parapros and administrators and directors all willing to help out. So there's a commitment from the whole district. It isn't just this board who wants to help out. So I want to make sure we know that they're doing that too.
Thank you. And I can just remember when this foundation was reactivated, it'd been in existence, but hadn't really been working as a foundation. And that was in 2017. And you've made tremendous growth in the last years, even with the pandemic in between. So hopefully you'll be able, when you come back with the next, you'll be able to share the exciting news that you're working on. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 8, informational update on the School Resource Officer, SRO, program in the Carson City School District and school safety. For discussion only, Sheriff Ken Furlong, Bob Chambers, Ann Sear, and Andrew Fueling.
Okay,
Follow your lead. All right, sir. Okay. You got everyone? Mr. Chambers? We weren't sure that Mr. Chambers was going to make it this evening, so I'm happy to see him. Yes. Thank you, President Crossman and trustees. So this evening, given in light of recent events here, really since the beginning of the second semester, and some concerns with safety in the schools and what is being done there, and just kind of comprehending all of these things. We have an item this evening to kind of give you a holistic view of safety in the schools, and I wanted to start that off talking a little bit about history, but we have at the table here this evening Sheriff Ken Furlong. Thank you for coming, sir. I'm not sure that this man ever sleeps, because I get calls at all sorts of times, but it's appreciated. I appreciate the support. We have Ann Sear, our risk manager for the school district, who's been a big part of this work over the years, and Principal Bob Chambers, who made it in through a late delayed flight out of Salt Lake City, but made a bumpy landing in Reno, and he's here. So I'll take this back. I think as far as I know, and when I came to the school district in 2014, we were at the, I'd say about 2/3 point of pretty significant safety upgrades across the district. The district, through its facilities master planning process, I believe in about 2010, 2011, one of the significant items on that was looking at doing a performing arts center here in the school district. And I think there was about $8 million that was expected to be used for that. And then a tragedy happened, and that was at Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th in 2012, where an active shooter went into a school, and there were many deaths associated with that event. And at that time, or subsequent to that event, it was decided here with the board to look at using some of those funds instead to improve safety here in the school district. And what that looked like in large part was putting in single points of entry at all of our schools. And I believe, to this day, I believe we are still the only school district that has that set up at all of our schools. So really, I think, in response to a tragedy, really put us ahead of the game in terms of getting to that point. Offices were moved in that process. Lots of fencing went up, upgraded door lock replacements across the district, and some other security upgrades along the way. The other part with history, and the sheriff may bring this up a little bit later, but he was instrumental back in, I believe it was 2015, 2016, in securing a grant to bring school resource officers into the Carson City School District. So at that time, it helped us bring 3 officers in. And a couple years later, we actually got a grant through the state to help bring in 2 more at that time in 2017. Those grants are now gone, and we bear some more of those costs, and we share those costs. But along with that, when that school safety grant came in, we had completed some safety and risk assessments at that time. And so there was much more work to be done around the school district. And I will defer to Ann here because she knows in much greater detail than I do about some of that work.
Thank you, Mr. Fueling. So, yes, we've come a long way. When I came to work in this school district in 2015, the single point entries had just been completed, I think, maybe 2 years before. I was working at the Nevada Public Agency Insurance Pool as the risk manager for that organization, and was the liaison between that organization and this school district when Sandy Hook occurred. And that became kind of a catalyst in my career, because up until that point, I had really been more of a generalist in terms of risk management. And after Sandy Hook, I just became very passionate about school safety, and that became my primary focus in my career, and what actually brought me to Carson City School District when Mr. Kevin Kearns retired. So what have we been doing since that time? It's been 8 years now, and Mr. Fueling spoke to some assessments, and I just want to touch briefly on the importance of the assessments that we use, because all of the decisions that we make about how we choose to fund security enhancements and what priority we give to those is really determined by a couple of different assessment tools that we use. So, every time we have one of these tragic events in this country, within hours, if not days, my phone and my email light up with vendors calling that want to sell us all kinds of solutions to that problem of violence. So we really try to use these assessment tools and not be distracted from the plans that we've made and what we've given priority to. So one of the first assessment tools that we use, and you can certainly look these up on the internet, these are publicly available tools, the Department of Homeland Security Critical Infrastructure Survey. This is a report that provides a list of identified vulnerability and potential security enhancements. And it's based on a protective security advisor's observations and discussions with key site personnel and our law enforcement partners. So we have a gentleman here in Northern Nevada by the name of Mike Matthews, and he has come and done these assessments with a number of our schools. We had this done at Carson High School about 3 years ago. We did it this year at Pioneer High School. But that is not an assessment that's conducted in a vacuum. We have the Protective Security Advisor, site representatives, our law enforcement partners, and myself, who all participate in this assessment process, which takes all day long, sometimes 2 days, depending on the size of the campus. So that survey is focused primarily on physical security and school security management policies, okay? And then another assessment tool that we use at all of our schools on an annual basis is the PASS assessment, and that's the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. You can access that information at passk12.org. And we use that assessment tool to determine what needs to be implemented at the school or on a district-wide basis. That assessment determines whether we have recommended school safety and security best practices in place, or if they're in progress, if they're needed for the future, or if it's even necessary for our facility based upon a risk profile that's established. So these assessment tools are used annually to determine our funding priorities, as I mentioned, and they have also been used to support various measures that we have sought grant funding for. So anytime we do go out and apply for grants, having those assessments completed really goes a long way in helping us get those grants approved. Let's see, about 6 years ago, we had a grant from our insurance pool that was used to replace the entire surveillance camera system. That was a significant project. We had a state grant that was awarded in 2018, and we have also received federal grants. One, it's called an SVPP, School Violence Prevention Program, and that was used to initially fund our visitor management system, which was one of the security measures that was recommended by Department of Homeland Security. So Safety Services continuously researches grant opportunities that might be available to fund new security measures, as well as to sustain the significant security infrastructure that the district has invested in over the past 8 years. So we have a lot that we've invested in, and all of that has a useful end of life and has to be sustained and replaced and serviced. So we do anticipate applying for another SVPP or possibly a STOP grant this year. So I'll briefly provide you with an overview of some of the types of security measures that we have implemented over the past 8 years. The surveillance system was completely gutted and replaced 6 years ago. We installed the Genetec security system. That is an integrated security system, meaning it does not use it's not just camera systems, but it also integrates the burglar alarms, the access control, any type of security sensors, fire alarms, all of it is integrated on one security platform so that it can be operated remotely from any web-enabled device. So at this time, we have 276 cameras attached to that network. 8 will be added over spring break, and although that may not sound like a lot of cameras, the way the cameras come equipped now, there's usually 4 lenses in one camera housing. So that's really more like about 32 cameras that are being added over spring break.
Where will those be added? Is it at one site or multiple school sites that those 8 cameras will be at?
Multiple sites.
Okay.
Yeah. We're actually adding 360 cameras in all of the elementary school multipurpose rooms. 160 of those cameras are going to need to be replaced, and that's been budgeted under the master plan, as they are over 6 years old and are no longer supported by the software. I'd also like to just mention that all of this surveillance technology is being enhanced by artificial intelligence. So that is like a whole new frontier of surveillance technology that we are looking at. So things like weapons detection, gunshot detection, all of these things that can be built into surveillance system cameras. We have been looking at demos of that technology, and we do anticipate that the next generation of cameras that gets installed as we continue to upgrade and replace equipment will most likely come equipped with some type of detection built in. Let's see here. So with that type of AI technology that gets built into a surveillance camera system, you can program that system to then launch like a sequence of events, such as mass notification, 911 alert, locking the building's doors, providing lockdown warnings over PA systems. All of these things are then integrated. One of the things that we just recently installed at all of our school districts was a lockdown button, which does not, contrary to the name of the button, lock the doors. When you hit the button, it announces a lockdown PA sequence. So the announcement comes over the public address system that warns everyone in the building to lock down. That will also initiate a 911 notification that is programmed just like a hold-up button at a bank. So it goes through to 911 dispatch as a hold-up. It will not be filtered through the central monitoring station with a phone call to our security technician asking if we really want to have 911 dispatched. If that particular type of notification comes through to 911, they're going to be dispatched. Let's see here, what else? So at this moment, we are running a pilot at one of our middle schools to test a new type of safety sensor. These are commonly known as vape sensors, but much like the cameras that are being enhanced with artificial intelligence, these sensors can alert to not only e-cigarette vapor, but also THC, the sounds of aggression, key words that can be programmed in, and the sound of gunfire. So that's something that we are running a pilot on right now, just to see proof of concept and how many false alarms we get and that type of thing. So in addition to the single point secured entrances over the past 2 years, we have also added electronic access control, which is essentially, opening up the doors with a little badge, right? This technology allows us to schedule openings and closing. We can lock and unlock the doors remotely. We can change schedules for different times of the year, and we can restrict access to certain areas where there are high-value assets located. This is another recommendation that was made to us by the Department of Homeland Security, so that was given priority. It's not a simple project. We're looking at adding more of these access points this summer, but it's a complex installation, particularly when you're dealing with older buildings. So you have to run electricity to the door. Sometimes the door hardware itself is not compatible with this type of new gadgetry, and so we have to replace the entire door itself. And then, of course, it all has to be wired back to the main security panel. So that's something that is anticipated we'll be building out more this summer, and we do have budgeting for that in the facilities master plan. Intrusion alarm systems are being replaced at 7 of our schools. We've been replacing these older Honeywell systems over the past few years as funding allows, or times when renovations in the buildings are being completed. The older systems, they're just basically at the end of their useful life. Some of them are just sending off random, what they call runaway signals throughout the evening, which results in many calls to the sheriff's office and our security technician at all hours of the evening from the central monitoring station, wondering, do we really need to dispatch, or is there just something funky going on with the wiring of the system? So we're looking forward to having some of those systems replaced and continuing to modernize all of these enhancements that we've made with regard to the security, the physical security in our building. I'd just like to note that physical security is really only one component of our overall approach to school safety. I know it's something that it's easy for people to get their head around, but it's a very complex thing to look at providing a safe and secure learning environment. Our emergency operations plan contemplates all of these threats and hazards and vulnerabilities that we're just continuously monitoring and evaluating and looking at, are we doing enough? And when we look at whether or not we're doing enough, we are always looking at that through the lens of emergency management. So all 5 phases of emergency management, looking at prevention, protection, mitigation, response, recovery, or in simpler terms, before, during, and after. Not just what are we going to do when this bad thing happens, but what are we doing before the bad thing happens to prepare for that and protect against that? And what are we doing after a bad things happen to provide for recovery and resiliency, right? So I think that's been enough out of me. Is that enough out of me? Okay.
I'm here to answer questions.
He's here to answer questions.
I'm waiting for a question.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, for the record, Sheriff Furlong. A lot has changed over the last, and I'm going to use AJ's time frame of since about 2015, the last 8 years. Just to, before I introduce a couple of folks, just to put it in perspective, if you assume that Carson City has a population of about 55,000, right now, our patrol assignments, we have 5 deputies on the road as well as a sergeant. That's our minimum staffing for this community at large. Here, through the cooperation of this board, as well as the Board of Supervisors, we have entertained a growing school resource program, officer program here in Carson City. It's pretty unique in the way we're setting it, the way we have it set up. It does consist of a sergeant that is handpicked by me that I determine can best function in that environment. Today, this is Sergeant Olson. He is in charge or responsible for our school resource officer program. The program has grown from 2, as AJ had said, to now we have up to 6 officers assigned to our schools. And that has been a gradual growth, as has already been identified. But we have specialties in that program, and I'm very, very fortunate. I didn't know they were going to be here exactly, but I'm very fortunate. Standing over by the door, Deputy Meade, who is one of our school resource officers, he is formerly a Tri-County Gang Unit officer. So he has a technical expertise in that area of many, many folks' concern. Along with that, Deputy Hindenberger is off here on the side. Deputy Hindenberger, during his off-school hours, he is primarily assigned to our special enforcement activities, where he targets and focuses in on narcotics and juvenile activities. As well, we have officers that attend to the Lake Tahoe area. During the summer months, we pair up with Washoe County Sheriff's Office to enforce juvenile activities or monitor juvenile activities along our shorelines, which has been very, very fruitful for us. Tagging on to Ann, our dispatch center has the full capabilities of monitoring all of the school's camera systems. It's up 24 hours a day inside the center, as well as the center provides for a safe, anonymous tips to be called in or through the internet provided into our our agency where we can get school resource officers, or in other cases, deputies assigned to those activities right away. Those systems are very, very active. A day doesn't go by that they're not heavily used. So our youth here in the community, they are engaging with us. For me, my major focus is our high school and our middle schools. Those 3 or 4 environments, if you want to include Pioneer, are a tremendous focus here. In the last year, let me back up just a little bit. In 2020, when we experienced the COVID drawbacks or shutdowns, that deeply affected one of our operations that you are very familiar with, and that's our DARE activities, educational platforms in the schools. It basically put that activity out of a job. Obviously, if we weren't in schools, we could not do that. I went to the Board of Supervisors, and we reclassified that position into a full-time deputy slot and added it to the school program. So amongst the entire program, there is one general fund full-time that the Board of Supervisors pays for it within the sheriff's budget. I'm going to come back to Kepler here in a second. Our school resource officer program is supported by a couple of other entities. We always look at overlapping jurisdictional responsibilities and support to one another. Up at the community college, we have 2 additional officers. They are assigned by UNR to help that institution, educational institution, and of course, all of our officers that are assigned to any type of a educational environment, they work closely together. Our response capabilities, our school resource officer programs are supported heavily by our motor traffic unit enforcement activities. We very often hear of traffic issues around our schools, so they're heavily involved in that, as well as our patrol divisions. The primary responsibilities of our school resource officers is to mentor and educate not only our children in the school environments, but as our staffs as well, what to look for and how they can assist. They collaborate with school officials on matters that are of concern, usually in the area of discipline. And if it is absolutely necessary, they will take enforcement activities. Understand, I've always said this, that our schools are safest when our children are at their desks. But there are challenges within our schools, and we have to attend to those. We are working very, very closely with juvenile services right now. I think some of you may have realized juvenile services has opened up an old program, and I say old, it was just one that was not being readily utilized, and that's educating parents about gang activities. Along that path, as a result of many of the recent activities over the last couple of months, our school resource officers, as well as our special enforcement team and others that we parallel work with, have instituted some home visits. We're going into the homes of kids that are identified as having some nexus or affiliation or identification with gang activities, and educating the family and the parents. I believe that is one of the most successful outreaches that the unit has done in the last 60 days. Our school resource officers are also responsible for our enforcement of our underage drinking laws, our after-school activities such as sports programs. Our Boys and Girls Club is very, very closely associated with this body. Those are the children that are going to the schools in the daytime, and as schools let out, very often they're over at the Boys and Girls Club, so this unit is attached to them as well. I already mentioned our Tahoe summer activities and our special enforcement moves. What has been going on? Well, to put this in perspective, we've had a series of events since after Christmas, call it the last 60, 90 days, that have reached a lot of public knowledge. We had a shooting that resulted in a death right out here on William Street, Highway 50. Obviously, everybody knows about the Carmine shooting incident, as well as a gun incident in the schools. These are not all kids that are in our schools. And I have to emphasize that. They've done a very, very good job, our investigations division, along with our school resource officers, of identifying anybody who was associated with any of these events, where they are from, and in many cases, they're not all from Carson. We've identified juveniles from Douglas County as well as Lyon County that were engaged. The nexus appeared to be in the homicide that occurred out here had no relationship whatsoever to our school districts or our school children. They were older. The Carmine Street shooting that I've referred to, the nexus or the roots that were embedded in this as our investigation continues, kids that were identifying as gang members from cross-county lines, and drugs. I've said this before and I will say it again, marijuana, marijuana, marijuana. We were very fortunate in our response to that with our school resource officers, juvenile services, the sheriff's office, Lyon County, and associated counties to be able to respond and really, truly, aggressively go after anybody who has any identifying information that he or she is affiliated with a gang. And return our schools or our community back to that somewhat peaceful environment that we've enjoyed for many, many years since our peak, quite a few, going back to 2015 and before. The gang response in this community and by this board and by the Carson City Board of Supervisors has been tremendously effective. So as we saw the escalations coming up this past school year, it necessitated us doing more. One of the programs or functionalities that we are addressing right now, some of you may be aware of, is that we have borrowed resources from the state to search schools on a random basis for guns. We have a dog that is assigned to Deputy Kepler and the school district. That dog is specifically designed for marijuana and school activities. In other words, he doesn't have the same type of training that your typical patrol dog has. Marijuana has no place on the school grounds whatsoever. So that dog, which was purchased locally through some of our businesses, I'll name them Toyota, was a tremendous advantage. This dog is now, as we speak, being trained to detect guns in the school campuses. I spoke with Mr. Varner earlier this evening. I've done extensive conversations with Clark County School District police officers. They strongly promote this concept. It provides for not only a deterrent, but a random basis ability to go through our schools and have some ability to detect specifically guns. Washoe County, I've spoken with the Washoe County Sheriff. They too are on this very, very same path. It's a sad state of affairs, but we must do that. We must provide for some detection capability where a student or other individual errantly brings a gun onto our campuses. I suspect that by the end of, by briefings, by the end of spring break, Deputy Kepler's dog will be certified, and he's used basically on a roving patrol basis for our schools. He'll be able to go to any school environment and exercise that dog, that canine function to detect weapons in our schools. I want to compliment all of our SROs. It's an extremely challenging environment with our kids and families going in and out of our schools. Yes, we have single points of entry, and I can attest to that because I go to some of these schools quite often. The school district is doing very, very well at cornering down who goes in and who goes out of those schools, including with the identification systems. I just went through Mark Twain's the other day. It's amazing. It's amazing the growth that has happened to protect our staff and our students. It's not foolproof, and it never will be. But we must continue, as Ann said, to make adjustments to enhance those operations and enhance those preventative measures that we can, within reason, take. All of our officers that are assigned to that school district are outstanding, tremendously committed, full-time to the district, including the most recent one. So with that, I can take any questions that the board may have. Ms. Crossman?
I'm just wondering, do we want to do questions now, or Mr. Chambers, do you have anything you want to present? And then we'll go to questions. What's the pleasure of the board, I guess? Okay, go ahead.
I didn't do a presentation because I was under the impression I was here for question and answer. Just, I can tell you just some very, general background things. I've been at the school for 24 years, and it's changed tremendously with the aspect to security within the school, right? Just the ability for anyone to walk in any entrance in that building 24 years ago and not have to check in an office or anything like that, to single point entry that we have now. There's a lot of things that we could definitely make the school more secure that, the Department of Homeland Security has offered us up, and looking into that, and hopefully a lot of that stuff happens. But I think the simple things that we do with the teachers and the staff are and it's been a boon for us, is just to simply remind them in staff meetings over and over again, if you see something, say something. And that has helped us out tremendously, because instead of just having 6 administrator eyes and 2 officer eyes looking at students and looking for realistically gang-related, what we really look into is tagging on teachers' papers and backpacks and clothing, et cetera. That has been very helpful for us. And not all tagging is gang-related, right? But we need to be able to look at that, take it to an expert, and then they can look through that and decide whether or not that is a gang-related tag or not. And that has really helped us out a lot. Hindenburger and Meade and I have a very open and honest relationship, and we can speak to each other in those terms, and we also trust each other. And that is very important. The relationship that we have is very important, because we do not lose time trying to find the right words to say something. We can just say it and then move on it and have action. Working with Officer Meade, we had Sergeant Gomes. Did I get his title right? So Sergeant Gomes came in this school year and offered a Stop the Bleed training for the whole staff. So our whole staff is tourniquet trained, Stop the Bleed trained. They understand how to make improvised tourniquets in an emergency. And then they did an active shooter training with our whole staff. And it was an excellent training. The teachers had excellent questions. And I don't know, I don't know your knowledge within that, but the number of doors that have ever been, locked doors that have ever been breached in a school shooting is 0. The only time a room has been breached where the door was locked was in northern Minnesota, where the assailant shot through the window and entered the school building that way. So just really helping teachers understand the safest place for students and children to be are in the classroom behind a locked door. 24 years ago, my door was open every single day. Propped open. Against the fire marshal's wishes, right? And that was Carson, that's how Carson High School looked. You would walk down the hallways and every single teacher's door was propped open, and the school does not look that way anymore. And so I think sometimes doing a lot of little simple things that don't cost any money and are very just using common sense and logic also help move the needle to a safer environment as well.
Do you have any questions from the board? We'll just start. Mr. Varner has his hand up, and then we'll come down the.
Number one, Sheriff, I want to commend you and your officers. I know you personally have had a very strong stance against gangs since you've been in office, and you guys have taken a very aggressive stand against them, so thank you on that. And I know that there's some people in the community, in fact, we have one comment in front of us, wanting metal detectors in schools. And for the public, I wonder if you could just spend maybe a brief time talking about the pros and the cons of metal detectors, so anybody listening may know why we may or may not move in that direction.
I think that AJ and Ann can best address that. You're talking about moving a population that is very large in through a single point of entry into a confined zone. In fact, thank you, Mr. Varner, I had this conversation earlier today. I think the best experts in the world is probably TSA. How do you move this many people through your checks and balances systems? It's enormously
Sheriff,
challenging.
could you just move the microphone a little closer? Renee's having a hard time hearing you.
Oh,
No,
they want it closer?
Yeah, she wants to hear you better.
My hearing aids are going to get me. Certainly, it is possible, and there are jurisdictions not only outside of the state of Nevada, but inside the state of Nevada that have used metal detection systems to feather the students and the staff into and out of the schools. But I think that question is best addressed over with these two.
Yeah, so I would just say that that's not something that has been recommended to our school district based on the outcomes of any of the assessments that we've done. I would think that if we were in an environment where we had a problem with guns on campus or a more severe gang violence situation, that there might be a recommendation to look at some type of weapons detection system. But based on our current risk profile, there has never been any recommendation to move towards that type of technology, placing emphasis on other types of security measures that would be just more feasible for us, aside from just manning the equipment. And manning the equipment is a big deal. Certainly not something that we could train school staff to do. That would require a trained law enforcement officer to man those stations and conduct those screenings. So that's really a staffing issue for the sheriff's department, because I don't think the school district, we don't have a security force. Some of these larger school districts, Clark County School District has a school police department. They have several hundred police officers that work for the school police department. We have SROs that are embedded in our schools. So it's a very different type of risk profile. I would also say that, we've researched it in the past because, of course, I have received those phone calls and those emails from people wanting to know, why don't we? And in researching it, I could not find any evidence-based research that metal detectors have reduced gun violence in a school. I did find one article that spoke to a district that implemented metal detectors, and the first time they had a school shooting, the shooter first shot the security guard who was manning the station where the screening would have taken place. So they shot the security officer and then walked right by the metal detector and into the school. So, yes.
So, and I get what you're saying, because it's the same argument we had about checking temperatures of kids during COVID. We don't have the people to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that the things we hear about is in light of the fact that there have been weapons found on campus, people are concerned, and I get it. And so maybe it's not metal detectors, but what can we do to assure our teachers, our parents, our students, because even they are affected, that they're safe at school? And what measures can we put in place? And I know that you don't have those answers, because that's, as a society,
right,
it's troubling to all of us that somebody would target a school. And so our minds don't work like that, but we do have people that are concerned. And so I think that as a school district, we have to have some answers, because it just takes one tragedy. And then we're all going to be sitting here banging our heads on the wall.
And I think that's a combination of security enhancements that we've been talking about tonight, looking at different types of gun detection technology that we can look at installing, certainly looking at the canine resource, see something, say something. And we also have, a number of programs that we implement when we have a student who presents a risk of threat, right? A risk of violence. Then we have a behavioral threat assessment team that will meet and assess the risk. And in those cases, we may require that that student be subjected to search every morning. So we do have ways of pinpointing, not necessarily searching every single student, but if we know a student has access to weapons or has been talking about bringing a gun to school or has had some situations going on at the school that are causing concern, some worrisome behavior, then that student may just be searched every morning or may not even be allowed to bring a backpack to school. So those are things that we have been doing.
I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you very much. I know it's costly, it's manpower intensive. Getting 2,300 kids through a metal detector with their water bottles they're carrying and any other metal they have in there would be a real chore. And also there's been studies that I found that says it hinders the learning environment of having metal detectors. The kids feel like they may be in a prison type situation. So we don't want to lock them down too much. But there are companies that manufacture detectors that are not stationary. They're portable and they're walk through. The kids do not have to take off their backpacks. And ones that I found manufactured by Ballistic Scan. And that may be something we'll look in. They're maintenance free and you just set them up on different posts and the kids walk through there and they don't have to take off their backpacks. So that may be something that we may want to explore.
I believe that type of scanning technology can be integrated into our existing security platform as well. It's a lot like gun detection in a camera. It's just a much larger lens that's sitting on a piece of glass, basically, as they walk by it.
But I think the school's, done a pretty good job of safety so far. And Sheriff, thank you again for everything you and your officers do.
Trustee Walt?
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. So you mentioned cameras, all the cameras. Who monitors those?
We don't monitor the cameras 24/7. The cameras are used for investigative purposes.
So then the cameras that you mentioned then that would be censored, those are the ones that you're looking at getting funded and then putting those into the buildings. Is that correct?
So at this point in time, we haven't completed any sort of proof of concept on that technology. The cameras that the vape sensors that we're doing a pilot on right now, if we were to decide to move forward with that type of technology, we would have to have a conversation with the sheriff's office and our secondary schools about how we staff to respond to those sensors throughout the day, because we would be installing 30 sensors in all of the bathrooms at the secondary schools, and that would be almost a full-time job, someone just responding to vape sensors going off throughout the day. So if we were to install that type of surveillance technology, that's not something that we use in an investigative manner, but something that we actually actively monitor, we would have to look at building more of a security force.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that 5 years ago there was an assessment done. How often is there an assessment done?
So the last assessment we did for the Department of Homeland Security at the high school was 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we do assessments every year. We're required to perform some type of assessment by statute. So we use the PASS guidelines, and that's just a self-conducted checklist type assessment. And then we bring in the Department of Homeland Security every 3 years.
Okay. So then is the single point of entry used all day? Or are the students able to enter into the school in multiple entries in the morning?
The students can enter through the main entrance and they can also enter at the north end of school. That's where like 90% of our students come through would be the north entrance.
And what's down there?
Myself, Gage, and Henneberger.
Okay. Okay. And then, so the concern that I had when I went is nutrition break.
Mhm.
That is, that's a lot.
Mhm.
you know, and at lunch as well.
Mhm.
And I think that it's those back hallways, you know, where, and I know that was mentioned, you know, in the public comment that we received as well, is the, you know, the different hallways that are, how are those monitored during, you know, the mass of students?
Administration and our SROs.
And so
And
that
then,
is,
and our security officer, we have one security officer.
so what is the ratio of that then? What
Off
it
the
would
top of my
be
head.
enrollment with our, you know,
230, 300 to 1-ish.
300 to 1. Okay.
I mean, that's off the top of my head as well.
Right. And no, and I can appreciate that. So it,
So, I mean, to maybe give you a little bit, so what we do is, but the school's broken down into sections. I'm at the north section of the school. So every person has a section, everybody's on a radio. And so as I patrol my section, let's say I see a group of students who are pretty fired up walking in a direction. I do not follow them. I will radio to the next person, students heading north down the west hallway. I stay where I'm at because like if I follow, oftentimes they will run. And then if they run, it becomes a really big problem in the building because then a lot of students start running. So then they'll just be met with another administrator who will then stand in front of them and then we'll disperse them or figure out what's going on. Because sometimes it's nothing. I mean, you know, sometimes a group of boys are boisterous and having a great time walking down a hallway. Sometimes it's something, right? But I mean, we do have plans in place. The school is broken up into sections. I patrol it. We all patrol it. And then at lunchtime, it's better because then you have teachers also working duty areas,
okay,
right?
right,
So lunchtime is totally different because that's a paid duty for teachers.
right. And so would it be advantageous to maybe have a paid duty during nutrition breaks? You know, when there's a large amount of students out there.
I think that would be pretty difficult to talk a teacher into the one time that they could go to the
Go
bathroom.
to the bathroom?
Right.
Yes,
to do
yes,
a
been there, done that, yes, yeah.
Trustee Walt,
Uh,
we
yeah.
have just posted 2 campus monitor positions. So we're hoping to hire an individual for Carson High School and one for Pioneer as well, who would be responsible for nothing but hallway and parking lot monitoring, particularly at passing and nutrition.
Okay. And I know that, you know, in the next presentation as well, this will be addressed, or not, yeah, the next one will be addressed as well. But you had mentioned you know, the security of the before. You know, what are we doing before? So you mentioned a whole lot of the physical security, you know, that is going on, but what are we doing about the non-physical security? If you can touch on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
so you're really talking about the types of training programs that we conduct throughout the year, something as simple as a fire drill, the lockdown drills that they have to do, the training that goes on in the classrooms, the relationships that these SROs are building with our student population, just awareness training, the campaign, see something, say something. These are all just kind of behavioral type of programs that we promote district-wide at various levels, you know, age appropriate.
Yeah, okay. And then I think this is for the 3 of you. Do we think that the enrollment at the high school is manageable for this type of situation? You know, when it comes to security at all? The high school's large.
Yeah.
And at what point are we going to say that it may be, you know, too large as a community?
So I can say that during the assessments, when we've had Department of Homeland Security people there has not been any remark on the population of the high school seeming unmanageable from a security perspective. These are individuals who are in high schools all over the state of Nevada. They're conducting security assessments in Reno and in Las Vegas. So I would think if they thought there were just too many people and that the people population was a part of the problem, that they would call that out on their assessment.
Our population is declining. If you remember 20 years ago, we had 2,500 students plus in that building. Teachers were on carts because every single classroom was used. Teachers didn't have classrooms. That's no longer the case. But I think that there's plenty of research to also support that once you get 2,000 plus, that students tend to become disconnected with the school, and that they can become, I'm not, like, there's just, it becomes more difficult to like really become a senator, to really get that school pride, because you're one of 2,300, and that's easy to fall into. So, I mean, I personally think that there's an advantage to having a smaller high school personally, but also Carson High is all I know, and it's also what I love, and I'm very used to 23, 24, 2,500 kids. It doesn't seem abnormal to me. And that's why I also like really always ask you guys, come to the school, come at lunch, come at nutrition, see what it's like. I mean, I know like Member Varner's been in there just so that, because, and I will keep saying, it's normal to me. Every single thing that happens inside of that building is normal to me. And sometimes a fresh set of eyes that will ask a question that just doesn't come up. Like, yeah, that's interesting. Like, let's look into that. Maybe that is something that we need to fix, because for me, it's very normal.
Yeah, I would just like to add that I think under the circumstances, you guys do a really good job of controlling the kids during those lunch periods and nutrition breaks. And I was impressed when I went through there with you.
Do we have other questions? Trustee Walker.
Well, and I mean, and I would just say for perspective, smaller high schools have similar problems. You know what I'm saying? It's not just because Carson High School's big that there's problems. I mean, these are problems in every district and every secondary school and every elementary school. I mean, we have problems at lunch too. So, I mean, it's kind of one of the problems. I think one of the things that, you know, Bob, you talked about being a senator, but there is a sense of community, and people do identify with that school. And I hear people that are impressed with the things they're doing. You know, I think that our sheriff's department works really well with our schools. So, I mean, is it Lieutenant Olson? Sergeant Olson. I've been. Give that man a raise. But, you know, I've been in 2 lockdowns, and he was one of the officers who responded. And within minutes, we had that support. And I think that in our community, we're very fortunate to have such great people working for our school district, such great people in our sheriff's department that all are working together for our students. We have our counseling departments who, you know, I don't know, I always am referring people to them or calling one of them and saying, hey, could you talk to so-and-so about blank? I mean, these kids are supported, and I think that our job is, as the governing body, what do we put in place to enhance the security? And it's going to take the work of both of us. It's going to take additional funds, because as we're talking about monitoring these systems, you know, these teachers are already underpaid.
Right.
And they do need a little bit of a break. You know, they need a lunch if we want them at the top of their game. So I guess I would say good job. I am concerned about safety, but it's not just at our schools, it's at all schools. And I do think we need to keep a fresh set of eyes on it and kind of look at best practices and continually improve what we're doing. And probably I would say that one of the things that I worry about is doing something like this in a school board meeting is that it's out there for everybody to hear. And so I'd much rather not hear that somebody hear that we have, you know, sensors that are detecting X, Y, and Z, just because that takes the element of surprise out of it.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I failed to mention, and you caused me to recall it, one of our major programs at the sheriff's office that has built up over the last, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years, 3 years or so, is our mobile outreach crisis team. They are heavily engaged with the school district, identifying youth, or in some cases parents, who are in a crisis circumstance and responding to that, and providing referral services that very well address safety in the schools. They are a major component of our school resource officer program.
Yes, Trustee Clapham.
Thank you. So a couple questions that I had, Ms. Sear, could you tell me the acronym for PASS again? I'm sorry, I just like to look that up.
Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. It's an alliance that was actually formed out of the Sandy Hook tragedy. School safety specialists from the school community, from the law enforcement community. It's a nonprofit. But yeah, you can look at their website and learn all about them.
Thank you. And then regarding, I guess, the technology, cameras, would you say, I think you mentioned it, but like longevity or turnover is roughly about every 6 years? Is that what you said?
We've been very fortunate. Yeah, typically you can plan on replacing a camera every 18 months to 24 months, but our cameras have really held up very well. We have 160 model numbers of a particular Sony camera that is no longer supported by our software. So they're still running fine. It's just they won't accept security upgrades, so we have to replace them.
Okay. And then, so I appreciate all the info on the high school, at the middle schools as well. So a couple questions. Teachers, are they supposed to be in the hallways at the middle schools during passing periods as well? And the reason I say that is I had actually someone in the public who has been in the school a couple times.
I just addressed that this Monday with Carson Middle.
Okay.
They do have teachers in the hallways during passing periods and also checking the bathrooms. But the kids are rowdy anyway, so it's a rowdy little school.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that was a concern that I had. I'd had, just some concerns that came to my house is my son witnessed his first fight, and that was pretty traumatic for him, I'll be honest. And then I had a concern that, yeah, there's a lot of rowdiness at the school, and I'm just wondering if teachers are there kind of suppressing that rowdiness. I had a parent come to me, and she was in the schools the other day at Carson Middle and a couple others that had talked to her, and there was a concern that there was a lack of just adult supervision that wasn't kind of suppressing that rowdiness. And so I just want to make sure that we do have that oversight there.
There was an incident, and we staffed up as well, but we didn't want to throw so many people out there that the parents became so concerned that they were pulling their kids away from the school. Rowdiness is a good way of putting it, and it was handled very, very well to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So just for clarification, and forgive me if you already said this, but do we have SROs Monday through Friday at the
Yes,
schools?
we have SROs on duty all
Monday
week
through
long.
Friday, and is it from 8 to 5, or is it just after school?
They normally operate within the school hours plus a few.
6 to 4, 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. is our schedule.
6 a.m. to 4 a.m. for the record.
5 SROs and myself.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking you guys are really putting in the hours.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you for this very, go ahead.
I'm sorry, President Crossman, thank you. AJ Feeling for the record. There is, I think, clearly always room for improvement, right, with everything. And I think a lot of work is done not only in terms of what the schools are doing, trying to manage some of this, in terms of what Anne is continually learning as far as what is available and what the next kind of best thing that we can do through her assessments or through vendors that knock on her door. The sheriff's office over time, I'm sure, has learned a whole lot about operating in schools and what works and what doesn't work and trying to improve that program. So I think there is a lot going on there over the past years. I know in the governor's State of the State address at the beginning of the legislative session, he mentioned providing additional funds for safety, for security in schools. The grant I mentioned, the second grant I mentioned when I introduced this, the school safety grant, that was provided, I believe, beginning in 2017. It was reauthorized at the state level in 2019. And then when COVID happened and everything started shutting down, the state was coming to us saying, what can you give back? What can you give back? Because we need as much money as we can get back. What, you know, and so that kind of was the end of those funds. And so we've tried to maintain that. But now with the governor bringing that up during his speech, I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm expecting that the state is going to be bringing forth some funds to help support more within the schools. It'd be fantastic if it was recurring funds and we could go to the sheriff's office and maybe he could round up maybe some more SROs. I'm sure he's got them hanging off the walls there. But still to be seen what that will look like at the federal level. There was some chatter about President Biden putting forth some money potentially to help with school safety. I haven't seen anything specifically come out with that. There are always some grants available, and some have been taken advantage of, like the COPS grant that the sheriff brought to us. So I think there's clearly more and more attention. I think especially with mental health concerns that we have seen across all schools nationally, not just here. I think there will be continued attention and continued funding to try to support this one way or another. When it's grants, of course, it doesn't always allow us the flexibility that we would like with some of the misdemeanor needs, but I think we have done very well in the past trying to be creative to use those in ways that we think best fit the district. So,
just listening to what you're saying and then Matt's questions, and this might be a question for Matt or the sheriff's department. When I was at Carson Middle School, typically, and I think Bob would probably agree with this, it's a small handful of kids that are being rowdy. The majority of our kids are good kids. And for those kids, we had was it called the FIRE program? We had some different programs through JPO that some of those kids, we could get them enrolled in these programs. Some they went to with their parents, and their parents got some skills. The child got some skills to deal with, performing in school, getting along with others, following directions, or whatever it might be. Some just needed a great relationship with an adult or whatever. And I'm just wondering, are those programs still around? And I know you work in Lyon County now, but you might be aware.
Yes, they are.
Many of them are still
Yeah,
around.
so we still refer out to JPO, and that was one thing that I did want to mention. We have a very close working relationship with JPO, and we have a great relationship with Carson City Sheriff's Office. Anything I have ever asked for, I have gotten instantly. The last snow day where we were concerned about traffic, I asked for extra traffic. We got it. If I text Allie Bannister and say, hey, I need some JPOs here at lunchtime, we're a little shorthanded, they're here. We'll refer out to all of their programs. We have such a great community of support for our school. And I'm going to hop on my stump just for a second. What we're experiencing at Carson High School is a community problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what we're all scratching our heads with right now, is because this is something that is outside of our school coming into our school. And the knee-jerk reaction is to look at the school and say, how are you going to fix the community problem? And I think we all know the answer is Carson High School can't fix a community problem. This community has to decide what direction it wants to point in and keep firearms out of the hands of children and keep THC, just so you know, all the THC that we pull off of kids now was bought at a dispensary. All of it. 10 years ago, we used to take bags of weed off of kids that was bought on the street. That's what we did. That is no longer the game. It's coming from dispensaries, so therefore it's coming from, obviously it always, but you know what I mean?
I get it, and I would say, and I know exactly what you're saying, but I think we also have to have some ownership because we are who the community's looking to. They are counting on our expertise. We're the people who deal with kids. And so I know that it's hard to find those answers, but there's nowhere else to go. And I would much rather have these kids learn their lessons from the educators than the sheriff's deputies. And I think that's what the bottom line is. I mean, we want to educate kids to have healthy lifestyles, to be safe in their world. And we're the people. And I know that we're ill-equipped because you and I went to college to teach kids how to read. We didn't talk about weapons and drugs or half of the things we have to deal with nowadays, but we have to evolve because our society is asking us to, and a lot is put on our plates whether we like it or not. There's kids without families.
I think
So
the point that I was getting to was, we just had a presentation with Jumpstart in our foundation where we have all of this excellent community support. How do we engage our community to support what we're trying to do in the building? And I think that it's a big missing piece of the puzzle right now.
And I want to chime in with you. You have outstanding students in this school district. It is amazing. I left the high school one night after one of the presentations that was going on. Students love accountability. Students love structure. And that's what is at the core of that school. I just, when I talk about it, you know, we very often say the high school, the high school, the high school. I appreciate your comments. Middle school is our focus. If we expect them to excel in high school, then we have to keep them on the track in the middle school environment.
And I would just say too, so we were talking about JPO, so they are looking, and I'm looking at Mrs. Fuson, I think the program was called Arise, that they're looking to expand into the middle schools and provide extra support there too. So the sheriff has told me for years that the middle schools ultimately are the most important piece to this, to getting things moving in the right direction as they move through the rest of it. So we have additional support there coming as well.
I thought I had it on and then it didn't go on. Thank you all for your very informative and candid response to questions. I'm thinking about this and looking at it. There's so many aspects for school safety. The SROs are one of it. The programming that we do. Sheriff, you mentioned DARE, and that I hope that that's coming back to our elementary schools, or I think there was the SWORN program. Some of that, programs that we have at the middle school level. There's parent education. I appreciate the JPOs reaching out to educate the parents. There's staffing concerns. Do we have enough? When I heard that there's 2 monitors and one to Carson High and one to Pioneer, I think they're both needed, but the size of Carson may need an additional monitor.
That was 2 for Carson.
2 for Carson and 1 for, okay, so
Correct.
3. Okay, great. I was like, I think we need another one there. There's the camera issues, there's the physical safety, and I'm wondering, I know we can't take action because it's a discussion only, but if this is something that is a concern and we'd like community involvement or something, perhaps there's a subcommittee that we could form a subcommittee to come up with what ways all of these things, what recommendations and what priorities our district wants to use to address this. And then if we do get additional funding from the state, we're in a position to prioritize where that would go. So that's kind of one of the ideas I had that we can think about. Okay, do we have any other questions? Oh, Trustee
I
Barnes.
just have one comment.
Laura, well, when you get a chance, I've got a little something.
Go ahead, Joe. I
Yeah, let
forgot you
Joe
were
go.
over there on that phone.
No, that's okay, and I apologize. It's been very hard to hear on my end, so I've got the computer on, but the computer, there's about a 30-second delay with the live feed. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Sheriff Furlong and the SROs. Like you said, you know, they're one part of the equation. Trustee Walker had mentioned, and he's right, that, you know, it does, when it's in the schools, it boils down to the schools and what we can do. But the reality is, you know, we have SROs, we have teachers to the best of their ability and staff walking the hallways, we have cameras, we have single points of entry. So I don't want anybody listening in to think that, you know, I don't want them to walk away from this with the understanding that, we don't care, or we're not trying, or we're making excuses. This is difficult, and it's very, very important. And the safety of our students and the safety of our staff and the visitors in our schools are paramount. Like Sheriff Furlong said, if you have certain expectations of your high school kids, you've got to teach them in middle school, and I would argue you have to teach them in elementary school. It's a process, and no matter what we do, it's never going to be perfect. So when we talk about metal detectors or other source of identification for what's coming into our schools, it's all worth the conversation. And this type of discussion is fantastic. And we probably just need to have more of these to make sure we're current on what we can do. But I guess my message to the public is we do care. Everybody on the school board and probably everybody who works for the district, whether it's themselves or a family or friend, they have somebody in the schools. In my case, I have a wife who's a teacher. I have a daughter who's a teacher. I'm in the schools sometimes. All three of my kids went to the school district, K through 12. So safety and academics are paramount for me, and I know they are for everybody else. So I just hope everybody knows that, this is one of probably many conversations we'll have over time to do the best we can for our students. I grew up in New York City as a young kid, Los Angeles, through like my middle school years. And we had some serious issues down there that fortunately we don't have to the extent up here. And we want to keep it that way. But unfortunately, you're always on the defensive. If somebody wants to cause a problem, we have to be able to react to it. So the best thing we can do is communicate with ourselves, communicate with our public safety officials, and communicate with our families, because it's going to take all of us. And fortunately, we have a really good district and community. It's not perfect, but it's very, very good, and we want to keep it as good and safe as we can be. But we need everybody's help and cooperation. So I just want to thank everybody for having this dialogue tonight.
Thank you, Trustee Casiopo. Trustee Varner, did you have another comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, just real quickly, if I could. I read a study by the National School Safety and Security Services and their recommendations of safety in schools. And I can tell you by going through this, we're doing the majority of them, what they recommend. We're already there. The one thing they did recommend, and I think it was brought up about all the students at lunchtime and nutrition breaks, the one recommendation they had is maybe elicit volunteers from parents to come in during those periods of time. But other than that, we're right where we need to be as far as their recommendations. And that's from the National School Safety and Security Services. So you guys are doing a good job. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Just a closing comment. Thank you all for inviting us here tonight. Normally, we would do these types of discussions with our joint board, but AJ here emphasized the need that we needed to discuss this right now because a series of events had taken place and the public was paying a lot of attention to what was going on in this community. So I appreciate you making the special allowance to have this discussion tonight. We do want to get on that track of our joint board meetings because it's as important to the community as it is to school board.
Thank you for that reminder. And that is something we are so appreciative of our city's support for the SRO program in the schools. So thank you very much. Thank you. I have had a request for a brief recess because people need to have a little recess. So we will adjourn, or no, we won't adjourn. We will recess for 5 minutes. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which is informational update on the school counselor program in the Carson City School District. For discussion only, Bridget Gordon.
Thank you, Madam President, for welcoming me tonight. I wanted, we have new board members, but I also just wanted to touch base because I haven't presented to the board in a couple years, just about what school counselors do for our district and kind of where we're going and what our next steps are as a district. So I'm going to be quick too because none of us have the attention spans for how long we have listened today. And also, school starts at 7:30. So I'm going to talk about who we are, what we do here, and where we're going as a district. Some of the wins first for 2023, the school year specifically, is that we got 3 new really good school counselors, and that's been a nice addition to this team. All 3 are from newer programming, so they have, I'll talk a little bit about, but the new version of how we school counsel. And all 3 have been really good fits with our whole team and are doing great. We completed registration in this district much, much earlier than we normally do, more than a month earlier. And so registration is a thing that school counselors do across this district, and it's huge. It's a crazy amount of work. So both high schools as well as the middle schools and then the 5th graders coming into middle school have all been registered and everything is complete. And that helps our district plan for, allocations for different teaching positions as well as just like how we need to move around our students and our staff to make sure that we have everything covered for the next year. The next thing is that we were really fortunate this year. Ms. Fuson made sure that all of our school counselors could attend our state school counselor conference. So that was a really excellent opportunity for PD, as counselors often are attending teacher PD. Obviously, that's not specific to the work that we do. So we are really grateful for that. We've had a really huge positive turn in our collaboration with school social workers and creating opportunities for our students where we work together, specifically on MTSS, and then our Project Aware, which is the grant bringing mental health therapy connections to our students that have a lot of barriers. So I'm really fortunate. I love our school social workers at Carson High School. And then the final win, I think, for this year is the increased admin education as far as like what are the roles of your school counselors? Because sometimes there's some ambiguity in what we even do. So I've pushed our team to really educate their admin to make sure everyone that is an admin knows what to expect of their school counselors. I was able to present to the principals. I created like a 1-page eval sheet for them. And I was able to like sit in on some of those supports for the new counselors. So who are school counselors? So school counselors all have a master's degree in school counseling. We all have to now come from what's called a K-CREP. So it's a very specific version of the school counseling program that the state of Nevada requires. And it's because it has a more comprehensive view of school counseling that includes our 3 areas. So social, emotional, college and career, and then academic. So the new school counselors coming to the state of Nevada, we all fall under that specific programming. It's a 700-hour intern. So if you want to be a school counselor, you're committing an entire, I committed most of a year to that internship. The state of Nevada changed our evaluation to be responsive to our ASCA ethical standards, or our ASCA, which is our like national board, what they expect of us school counselors. So it's excellent because now admin really have a direct line of what should your school counselor be doing. And it is directly correlated with our national board. I put on, as I introduced the counselors, our caseloads mostly because I wanted to highlight how well Carson City School District is doing in our caseload numbers. Many school counselors across the nation are facing caseloads of, even in Las Vegas, like 500 to 1. And Tasha really worked hard actually to lower our number. Carson High School only had 6 counselors until she brought me on. So our number is only as good as it is because she advocated for that. So we have no elementary school counselors in Carson City School District, which always is, if you've heard me talk before, something that I always advocate for and something I really hope moving forward we look at, especially listening to everything we just did about guns, right? Because the #1 line of defense for young people is making them well and making sure they're well. Because if they're well, they're not doing these things. No kids joining a gang because it's cool. They're joining because they're running from something. So at Eagle Valley, we have 3 school counselors, Lupe, Mandy, and Whitney. Their caseload at EVMS is 267 to 1, so that's right in that like really good range. CMS, we have 3. We have Jez, he's one of our new ones. He came to us from Lion, or Story, one of those guys. Lion, Roger, who's been here for a while, and then Madison. And theirs is 280 to 1, so also okay. PHS has Carrie Jordan. His is far below the rest of ours and a really appropriate number, 228. That includes his online, so that's a good case number. And then at CHS, we have the biggest, obviously. So, I mean, we would love an 8th counselor, but we have 330 to 1. I have the highest at 335. And we at CHS, we have Nikki Hendy, Monica Weaver, Dory Draper, Michelle Quintero. Justin Barlow is our new one. He was one of our wrestling coaches tonight. Fawn Lewis, and then myself. So we each have really interesting websites. I put them in this presentation so you can go to them later, but specifically at the high school, we worked really hard to make our program equitable or accessible to all students. So our scholarship website is super, super engaging. That's where all students can find all scholarships. Our school profile now is really competitive. Why that matters is like our students that are applying to these highly selective schools, those schools are going to these websites and utilizing them to judge our students as well. So it's really important that our school profiles and our school course books and things are competitive, but also accessible. All right, so why are we not called guidance counselors anymore? Mr. Chambers loves to like call me a guidance counselor just to like cause trouble. But the reason is because there's huge research studies about this. Guidance counselors are what often people had experiences with, back in the day. And it wasn't positive. It was linear. Maybe they didn't even tell you anything, or they told you weren't smart enough to go to college, or it was really prescriptive. They didn't help everyone, and it was really just about vocation. So this study found that with our new school counselors, our new training program, all the things I'm going to talk about tonight, calling us school counselors was a more reflective, comprehensive name for us, and it had a better positive response. So that's why we're not guidance counselors any longer. So what do? I said that we break it up into these 3 categories, and this is obviously just like a snapshot of what we do. But as we look at every student and every school, we look at them in 3. School counselors are trained to look at them in 3 categories: academic, social, emotional, and college and career. So every student that walks in my door, I'm supporting them and analyzing them in each of these 3 areas. So academically, we're doing a lot of consulting and collaborating with teachers, right? I get emails all day long like, hey, this kid is really struggling. And then I work with them and the parent as the go-between to help find some interventions that would help. We obviously do class placement and scheduling, right? That's the least favorite of our thing, but that's something that's really important. As I look at my students, I want to make sure that their goals are supported by the classes they take. And that starts in middle school with their like CTE pathways and stuff. We do all the transcripts and attendance monitoring, that kind of thing, just making sure that a kid is going to graduate or going to graduate middle school. We hold parent-teacher meetings for kids that are struggling. We do 504s. We're the 504 managers for Carson City School District, besides the elementaries where the vice principals do. We're IEP team members. So we're just kind of academically overseeing that piece. Obviously, social and emotional has become a huge part of the work that we're doing. I would say it takes up a significant portion of our days. School counselors are trained to do this thing called brief solution therapy. So essentially, a kid comes in, you analyze what's going on, what's the problem, and find a solution with them in a short amount of time to triage them with the goal of getting them back to class, right? So school counselors are not doing hour-long sessions. We're doing like, what has worked for you before? How can we get this triaged? And if you need a higher level of care, how do we refer you to that? Whether that's going to an outside therapist or social worker, that kind of thing. We're trained to do whole school SEL, so that's weeks of respect, bringing that kind of thing, but also small group things. So this is like at CHS, we have a Latinx group, or we have, the middle schools, we have like a lot of self-esteem groups, those kind of things, right? So we're trained for that. And then we're trained for interventions individually and calming, suicide screenings, any of those kind of crisis supports we're trained for. We're also trained to do staff trainings. That's a unique function of school counselors. We're trained. The thing about school counselors is we get into this job because we want to be in schools, right? I don't ever want to be a clinician. So we're trained to support teachers in crisis stuff. Like when all the things that have happened at the high school, we're trained to support teachers in their feelings or the things that they need and give them referrals as well. We're trained to do parent nights, and we do a lot of parent nights. And then moving on for college and career, obviously we do college and career lessons in our classrooms. We do fairs, support and exploration. It is one of the areas that I most wish we had elementary school counselors for, because elementary school counselors start these lessons in kindergarten, like what jobs exist. And I went to Mark Twain for Reading Week and did a lesson where I got to read a book about college and talk about college with third graders. And it was so amazing, right? And I wish that there was school counselors doing the academic and social emotional, but also this college and career. At the high school, we're also really instrumental in creating four-year plans, which is a state of Nevada requirement. We advocate, obviously, for a college and career-going culture, so pushing our students towards more rigorous classes and supporting equity so that all students have access, whether that's AP or CTE or Jumpstart, whatever. For the Common App, which is really the application for colleges that are a little bit more rigorous, but even some of the state schools, school counselors are required. So we have a huge piece we do for each of those things as well. And for college applications, we're instrumental. I kind of highlighted just some of the things I've talked about already, but just the scope of our work. We're school leaders. Oftentimes, the deans or the admin or the teachers come to us because they know that we'll know something about that student before they go to the next spot. We work really closely with our community partners, juvenile probation. Like I know all of them really well and what they need and like who their students are. And so having those connections and one school counselor that stays with that child for the course of their time in your school really creates this very specific relationship that can allow that child like a really safe place to land if maybe they don't otherwise. But even if they do, it's a really nice connection between the family and the school. The school counselor serves that role. All right, so looking to the future. So I really want to continue advocating for elementary school counselors. Every time we meet, this is something that I will talk about. Every time we meet as a district counseling staff, it always comes up, right? Our freshman class, which are now sophomores, are the first group that did not have any elementary school counselors. They're busy. And so I would love to like revisit the idea of even elementary school principals having the option of a social worker or a counselor. I think that would be an excellent way to do it. Right now, all elementaries have social workers. We're gonna look at implementing this program called SCUDA, which will push all school counselors to have data-driven programming. So we did a pilot, Tasha and I, and it's something we want to look at. And then increasing that equity right to access. So moving the middle schools to CTE, and then improving our AP and Jumpstart programming so that we are creating students that are pushing our society forward, which is ultimately sort of our goal. I included in this presentation some links that are helpful. I gave you guys in your board packet a page as well about the role of school counselors. There's several legislative bills coming forward about school counseling. So we're all tracking that, but just if you have anyone's ear. The distinct thing again about school counselors is when we entered college, our goal was to work in a school, right? Which is a unique thing about us as mental health professionals that not all the rest share. Okay, I tried to be fast because we had to listen for 2.5 hours. So do you guys have any questions about school counselors or things that I can help with?
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Trustee Walt.
I really don't have a question as much as I have a comment. So yes, I do believe I share your enthusiasm of having elementary school counselors. I really do, and anything that I can do to support that, I would. My father was at the high school for 12 years. He was at Mark Twain. He was at Pioneer for a little bit as well. So, and seeing that and hearing the stories, there is a need. There's a need for elementary school counselors, just who's ever in the audience listening. Yes, so I share with that. I'm glad to hear that they have caseworkers, but most importantly, having 4 kids go through Carson High School, I can't say enough how much I have appreciated the counselors that they have had, and continue, to have, because it college scholarships, college applications, it's, procrastination, last minute, my daughter saying, Miss Andy, could you hurry up and write a letter of recommendation? And I'm thinking, you've given her literally 6 hours to
Yeah.
do this. Why
Yeah.
do you do this?
Yeah.
But yet, boom,
Yeah.
you've got it there. And so you play such a huge role. And I would support, your ratio to decrease that in any way that I can at the high school as well, because I do think it's too much. And I'm glad you have caseworkers, but I do think you need more there too as well. I think a lot of our security and the problems that we might have might be mental health, and we need to be able to address that. So, but kudos to you, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Trustee Walker.
So do you have any recommendations? No, good job. I mean, I really do respect the work you do. I agree with everything Trustee Walt said. And like I said, people who contact me because they have concerns about their kids at the high school or this or that, the first thing I could tell them is, oh, they have great counselors. Have you contacted them yet? And then I could get them in touch with someone, and they always comment on how helpful you guys were. And so, you're not only helpful to the kids, but also to the parents. And so that's really a testament to your professionalism. So thank you to all of your colleagues and you for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like we're really fortunate in Carson. We have a pretty good team. So, and obviously very supported by the district, which is great.
I just want to say that I really appreciate your passion for, doing the best and providing the best for the students. I've seen you in action back when I was at the college, and I would go and recruit students. I would see how the students just went up to you because you really, truly cared, to help them with anything. And so what you presented tonight is just another way of, broadening your energy and your passion for to make sure that all students are offered those opportunities. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Lupe. I'm lucky to work at the best high school in the state of Nevada. So
Thank you. And I would just say, if you're tracking any bills that are requiring school counselors, I am in favor of it, and I'm in favor of them providing funding
yes,
for that
we
as
need
well.
the funding. I know, I can feel Tasha like stop. Yeah,
Yes.
the funding.
Thank you so much. You did a great job tonight.
Hey, Laurel, I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry, I don't see your face.
I know, and it's such a nice face. I'm sorry for you. Hey, real quick, Bridget, first of all, thank you very much. I really appreciate all you do. I know in the 11 years I've been on the school board, having enough counselors has always been an issue. So I just want to say thank you for everything you do. Over the last few years, we've had a variety of public comment, if you will, and it kind of sparked a question. So I guess 2 questions for you I have. One is, we talk about counselors, we talk about social workers, and on less occasion, I've heard people come up and talk about the need for behavioral specialists. And quite frankly, I don't know the difference between all of that, but I do know that our counselors and our social workers, just like our teachers and other staff, are spread very thin. But do you feel that the counselors can provide the behavioral and I guess mental health services in modern day schools that we need? And when I say that, I guess I include social workers as well. Or is there another aspect of this we need to be considering and to help you? And then the other question I have is, given how thin you're all spread, how much time do you have as counselors to kind of interact with the teachers and kind of sit down and say, hey, how can we help each other? in helping our students?
Those are very good questions. So the first question can we deal with the mental health crisis that our students are facing? I think we've been fortunate in some of our PD, our professional development, that we've gotten some more skills. Certainly our newer counselors, we've all been through this specific training to do these interventions. So I definitely feel really equipped to assist my students when they come in crisis or when they have mental health needs. We obviously in Northern Nevada are in a mental health desert as far as therapy for our students, but with Project Aware, we've had some tremendous success bringing therapy to the schools and connecting families that need therapy. As far as like behavior stuff, I wish that all of you could just come spend a day with me, because a huge piece sometimes are my students that are chronically in behavior issues that will get called to the office or something, come to me first, and I go with them. And all that does is like alleviates that stress that comes with behavior management. And then it helps them return to the classroom or to the school setting in a much more restorative way, right? Because they feel like there's someone that's in their corner, that's on their side while still holding them accountable. So I really think that school counselors are specifically equipped to deal with behavior. Absolutely. And I think that we're really fortunate to have good partnerships for that reason. Working with teachers is one of the goals that Mr. Chambers had, which has been really helpful. Homeroom has been like, at the high school specifically, an area where we as counselors supported teachers a lot in this, like talking about mental health, because teachers aren't trained in talking about mental health and it is really uncomfortable for them. And so we have set up these like times for teachers to come to us. I've done, I think, like 5 PD for the school about homeroom and talking about that. And then my door is always open. So again, when you come to my office, it's never empty. But there's often teachers, and it's really because they need some ideas or some help to work with their own students. So the bulk of my time is with students, but I am with teachers, a lot one-on-one. And I would say all my colleagues at all levels are as well.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just think that's an important part of this whole puzzle, is that coordination between not just teachers and counselors, but with the, with the administrative staff as well. Because I think it's so dynamic that, you get into the middle of this and the teachers have a class of whatever it is, 25 students, and you get 1 or 2 that just take a lot of their time. And the counselors do a good job of supporting them. But I just think that constant communication on ways, how can we keep improving, from all directions, teaching, counseling, administrating, the whole thing, just helps us to keep staying on course and doing what we can to support education.
Yeah, certainly. There's a quote about why young people join gangs, and it's that young people join gangs because they have a lethal absence of hope. And it's something that drives me. This lethal absence of hope, I think, applies to a lot of different things, not just gangs. But so as school counselors, I think all of us are driving to help students find, what is that you're doing? What is it that you can find and cling on to and get hope from? Well, whether that's, your future job or a class you have or a person. So anyways, I think that's the school counselor's sort of driving force in Carson. We're very fortunate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And very well said. I think that I think your driving force is evident in your passion for the kids and your passion for your job. So thank you for being part of our team. Good night. Go to bed. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 10. Jason Zona, this is annual report from Pioneer Academy on program supports for students and celebrations for discussion only.
President Crossman, members of the board, thanks for having me here tonight. I will get this presentation going. And my staff has, they recommended me not go with the 60 slide option, and my wife, so we did pare it down a little bit. Okay. I'll start off just by saying welcome new members of the board. I've worked with you guys in the past. In light of how board members have been treated in the last couple of years, I really give you guys a lot of kudos for stepping up and doing this as part of your life, improving our school district. We may not always agree. I'm sure that won't happen, but thanks for what you do. These are the subjects I was asked to come and talk about today. Before I start that, we're in our second year of being a 1 through 12 academy, so that's pretty young. We're used to being a high school, but we added the elementary and middle school these last 2 years. So I'm going to review briefly some programs, supports, and celebrations. A lot of this is in your packet, so you can, if I'm not talking enough about it, you can research it later. What we look like demographically for Pioneer, we're at our largest population we've ever had. When this was run, we were 230 students. 205 are high school students. 146 are on campus, 59 full-time online. Only 20 middle school students were online and 5 elementary. We were shocked at the amount of elementary post-COVID, but we're really back to normal because we only had about a half dozen elementary online before COVID happened. So we're kind of, that shouldn't be too shocking. Some of the observations our staff has made recently, we are the largest since 1998, which is a good sign. We keep growing. We have a low number of seniors. So we typically, over the years, were top heavy. We had a lot of juniors and seniors. That's kind of changed over this last 2 years now. We have the highest number of referrals, which is not a good sign, but we've become less transient. So
Referrals for special education testing or behavior referrals?
behavior referrals. Yeah, I would say it's doubled. We'll get the numbers, but it feels like it's doubled, and we can see that it's doubled. It's calmed down second semester, but first semester was a doozy. So from that, we have adjusted our master schedule, our course offerings. Staffing for elementary was added in middle school. We've reviewed our interventions, and we go from our data and we see what we need to do next. For first semester, this is what our attendance looks like. Our target group obviously is our on-campus students, and those are 9 through 12, and the rest are doing pretty good. Our elementary slipped a little bit. They got to 99.2. We'll have to work on that as well. But really, it's our on-campus high school students that really is our focus for attendance. When it comes to culture at Pioneer, we look at this state survey, the SEL survey. The students do this all across middle school, elementary, and high school. Consistently for the last 6 to 7 years, our students are rating themselves higher in 4 out of 5 categories with regards to how they feel safe and cared for. The one that they don't usually rate themselves high in is self-confidence and what they're going to do in life. So that's one thing we keep working on. Here's an example from the survey. Our school, in compared to the district survey, how kids felt about physical safety. And so from these large categories, it's been very consistent over the years. Our team is the reason why we're successful, who we hire, how we hire folks. Our team helps hire the new people that come in. We have a lot of folks with master's degrees. We have folks that teach at universities and colleges. A lot of them have 6 to 29 years. I think our newest person has 3 years of experience as a teacher. So here's our team. I want to draw attention to the lady at the lower left. That's Amy Strom. She wears many hats. She's one of the supports that we've been granted is a learning strategist. It's a critical position. She does interventions. She also is the admin designee when I'm not there. So she does a lot. For grant funding, these are some of the things we do with the grant funding. Learning strategist position, attendance clerk, online lab staff for credit recovery, project discovery, professional pay for after contract hours. The social worker is grant funded. Summer school, AVID. and some of the interventions we've added are in dark. So this year we have 2 teachers who are willing to work at lunch, and they get paid to have students come who are failing, and students can come get tutored in math and science. We have credit recovery, like we mentioned. Those are about 4 periods per day, full year of algebra, AVID classes, college prep, dual credits we keep adding each year, jobs for Nevada's graduates, and we make additions to the master schedule. For college and career readiness, here are some of the focuses we have identified. Obviously, JAG helps kids learn what's out there, and there's a career focus to it. The dual options we have on campus are communications, college prep, English, and theater. And there's a college prep for math. We have CTE options we're working on with Carson High, and we also have Project Lead the Way with engineering courses. Jumpstart, ACT, Work Keys, and next year we're adding American Sign Language. So I want to draw your attention to the history of Pioneer. In 1998, we were under the umbrella of Carson High. We did not have a separate accreditation, so that was the first charge I was given to get it separately accredited. So our team did that in 2009. We went from 9 courses offered in 2008 to 14, and then last year we offered 95 courses, core and elective, on campus with our staff. So it's quite a load for our teachers, and they're doing a great job. We're seeing that 95 is probably the max with the current staffing that we need, that we can actually offer with online and in-seat courses. So in the package, you guys you'll see what the breakdowns are for middle school, elementary, and high school, what types of courses we have on campus. Master schedule, it's a big part of our support. We increased instructional time a few years ago. It's 360 minutes per day. The students start earlier and end later than at Carson High by a few minutes. It's a 4x4 block, 90-minute classes, and we have a very minimal passing period. We have like 2 passing periods of 5 minutes. So we've maximized the minutes in the day for instruction. The other big one we have is the 8 credits minimum schedule per year, which gives you lots of room to catch up or graduate early or take jumpstart courses. This was mentioned already. We added the National Honor Society. Very happy with Ms. Walker for doing that. I was very surprised we had 26 out of 205 high school students who qualified. So that was a good celebration. These are some of our kids improving our school. One kid had an idea for a sound stage or a sound booth. Teacher wrote a grant, and we ended up installing that on campus. Kids in engineering help with the greenhouse. They help build things. A lot of good stuff going on. The facility is amazing for celebrations. I think the hardening that we talked about of school campuses with single point entry is huge. We're able to do that because we're so small. And I think parent communication is really a plus. The use of Parent Square helps us communicate to our parents a lot better, and we do see a lot of interaction. Celebrations for elementary and middle. Our elementary kids outperformed in 2022 on the SBAC, all the other sites in ELA. Middle school, they outperformed in ELA and math. And they should, because these students actually applied to get in. That application was made by the school district, and it was made because not every student can do online, and they get less direct teacher interaction. So what we've done with graduation over the years, in 2012, Pioneer had 29.4% graduation rate. We hit our peak in 2019, right before COVID, at 82%, and we slipped a little 2020 and 2021 and back up to 80% for last year. to put that in perspective, we're graded like a comprehensive large high school as a small alternative school. So we have the same measurements. When I look around at some other surrounding areas of schools our sizes, these are the rates that you find from the NDOE. So that was slide 35 of 58. I have more information if you guys want it, but I can take questions or whatever you'd like.
Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Trustee Varner.
First of all, I'd just like to say I think you've done a tremendous job at Pioneer. I mean, looking at the stats, it's obvious, you know, and the graduation rate compared to other schools similar is very good. I'm just curious about your absentee rate.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. That's been a consistent challenge for us. We were slightly better first semester this year than the previous semester, but it's a laundry list of excuses. I don't want to make them for you. We keep adding layers to what we do to intervene, but I think with the recent illnesses and sickness, that's been tough to do. We knock on doors. You make things relevant in classes. You make them want to come to school. So we've tried a new thing where all teachers are collaborating. We call it a discovery block, and all the grade levels will interact for the entire day. We found good attendance on that day that we tried that option, but we're definitely it's a huge challenge, and that goes back to a community problem as well. It's our problem, but it's also a community problem. You know, it's important to be in school. It's safer. We can't help them if they're not there. So, yeah, I don't have a good answer right now.
Well, that's all right.
We're on a good trend, though.
Yeah, parent involvement, do you have programs for that?
We've had more parent events this year than we ever had. One was the National Honor Society thing that filled the gym. I couldn't believe it. We had a lot more orientations for kids who are coming in for online. So those are more of the things we've added. So that's a great thing. We'll keep doing it.
Regarding your attendance, do you find that when you go to the homes, are the students at home or are they working?
I think it's definitely a mixture. Go back to the attendance slide here. There's, you know, it's the same reasons we've heard for years and years. When they're home, someone isn't making them come to school, or someone's not holding them accountable to be there every day. And their work really hasn't gotten in the way. Sometimes it's after school. Sometimes they're too tired to come early. But we definitely need more accountability on every side to make them come to school. And I think we've all struggled. If you ask administrators, you know, where's the teeth for truancy? We can keep adding layers every year like we do. But when is a parent going to be accountable for their kid being in school? Is a driver's license going to be suspended? Is there a citation for a parent that they have to go to court? Maybe a fine?
I agree.
I have some opinions on that.
Yeah, as do I.
But it's missing right now.
Right. What is the school's capacity? Like the physical school's capacity?
It was built around for about 200, 220, and we're at 230 right now. We still can add more because of our hybrid scheduling. Some kids are home, some are on campus. We've added staff, so I think that 220 was actually low, so we can keep going.
You could. Yeah. And then the one question I had is there an application process to get into Pioneer?
Great question. So Pioneer is a public school. So the same registration process happens at Carson High. The application process is for online. So elementary, middle, and high school, that was developed by the school district and all the principals. We sat down and made that application process because it is a harder thing to complete. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, first of all, I want to congratulate you because you know what, that graduation rate from 2019 was 82 and you're back up to 80% in 22. That's very impressive because we recognize that, you know, the schools are struggling getting those graduations back up. So good job on that. But I also have a question. Are you working with Dr. Medina to come up with solutions for those students that are struggling with attendance? I know that he is restructuring the school attendance review board process that they have in place for, you know, this is a district-wide board. Do you work with him to help your students with those attendance issues?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of good work that's going on. Ricky's got a huge job with that. It takes all the schools and all of our staff. We have an attendance person hired specifically for that. And I think that group looks a lot like a hearing committee for discipline. But the work is going on, and you know, we'll keep bringing forth our ideas. But I'll go back to the teeth missing. That's not Ricky's fault. But I think that's going to be something we need to work with together.
I met with him last week, and he did tell me that they are restructuring the process, and so I think they have a lot of good things coming down the pipe, and I
Excellent.
think your students would definitely benefit from that too.
Excellent. And I think that goes back to the parent involvement. The more we invite them onto the campus, they may not be afraid to talk to us, ask questions.
Absolutely.
And see what we're doing. So.
Yes.
And I would say, I mean, certainly you want higher attendance and engagement in your school, but 81% isn't horrible. And I think one of the things we'll see from all of our schools, attendance is an issue. And I think that all principals will say, we could do a million things to encourage attendance, but we can't make a kid come to school. And I think that's the message I hear you saying, that I think that we could restructure anything we want, but if people aren't held accountable, we can't show up at your house and say, get in the car. I mean, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, and the same thing goes for staff. If people want to work at your building and they feel safe and comfortable and they're appreciated, they come to work more. Same thing with the kids. And so the more we appreciate them, the more they learn to trust us. I haven't done the study yet, but I would imagine when we get new students, their attendance rate is such. And then as they go and they go through our staff and they get to know what we're all about, it gets better. And so I'll actually run those numbers next time and see if there's anything.
Hey, Laurel, Joe.
Yep, I was just going to see if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Jason, I just want to say thanks for everything you do. You, you know, when I first came on the school board years ago, you know, trying to understand all the schools, the high school, the middle schools, and all the levels, and Pioneer, and just watching how Pioneer has grown over this time, over the 11 years I've been on the board, it's impressive. And I've had a chance to talk to you a couple of times, with your staff, more times than that. And everybody there is committed to doing what they can for students. And we've really grown into while it's not a comprehensive high school, it is so much more comprehensive than what it was before. We're meeting so many needs of these kids. And when I say we, you and your staff. And this is a challenging time, and I'm sure every generation says it in education, but truly this is a challenging time where discipline problems are probably at a heightened rise than what they normally are. And I agree with you, you know, when we talk about attendance, it's one of the things that we just can't control. And I struggle with having to send teachers and staff to houses to say, hey, why isn't your kid at school today? And for most parents, that doesn't apply, but for some it does. And it's, you know, they say it takes a village. And we need cooperation, not just from everybody in the district, but from the community and from the families. And I just want to say that it's a stacked deck, and you guys are doing a great job. Things can always improve, but I want to thank you and your staff for what you do, because it's no easy challenge at any level.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We have a great staff, so I'm really honored to work with them.
Trustee Walt?
This question is more for Mr. Fueling. Do we not have truancy officers?
We had one, and I believe they are trying to hire another one. I'm not really sure where we're at on that.
Oh, yeah. And is that district-wide? or-
It's a district-wide position, and it's, because of the nature of it, it actually falls under Dr. Medina with the SAR board. We had Alice Valdez, who served us for a long time, who was fantastic. That position is posted as of right now, and so we've been trying to fill it for some time.
So just so I can clarify, we have one and we're looking to fill another, or we don't have one because we're looking to fill the position?
We don't have one right now because we're trying to fill the position.
And just a comment I have on attendance, I think we're gonna see it for a couple years after the latest thing, when kids get sick, or if they get sick and they've got symptoms for 5 days, parents are gonna be keeping them home, and it might be something we see across all the schools. Sometimes you just have bad luck where they catch everything that winter, it seems
Well,
like.
and when kids are sick, we do want them to stay home.
Yes, we do.
It's when the kids aren't sick that we want to make sure that they're at school.
Yes. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions at this time? Thank you very much, Mr. Zonin. Thanks for staying late with us.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Great job.
Appreciate you.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 11, discussion and possible action to approve proposed changes to Carson City School District Policy 331, job-related expenses, which includes renumbering the policy to 1060 in section 1000, all staff. This is a second reading for possible action. Tasha Fuson.
Thank you, President Crossman. Tasha Fuson for the record. As she stated, this is our second reading. There was only one request for change at the last reading. I did forget to change the certified staff to all staff. So on your copy in front of you, you should see the word all added in red. So that is the change, and the only other change from the last reading. So we are requesting approval of this board policy.
And this is an action item, so I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve March 14th, 2023 as a revised date for policy 331, which includes renumbering the policy to 1060 in section 1000, all staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion among the board? Do we have any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and the motion carries. Thank you, Tasha, for that very brief agenda item.
Thank you all. I get the award.
Okay, we will move on to agenda item 12, which may take a little bit longer. Presentation and discussion on budget assumptions for the Carson City School District for fiscal year 2023 to 2024 for discussion only, and Spencer Winward.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Lovely weather we're having. I was reading about how to break the ice when you're presenting publicly, and it says, start with something benign like the weather. Two easy steps. Second step was, don't bring up something that could be bad in some people's minds, so I blew it already. All right. Whoa. Okay, got a short presentation here, and the reason for this is something that we've kind of done every year, and this is just to start a discussion on some of the indicators and factors that are going to go into forming our budget for the FY24 year. So we're just going to talk about a couple of those things, give you guys a chance to ask any questions, and then it's the start of the budget process. So we'll get into this presentation a little bit further on a few more opportunities that we'll have to discuss this even further in the weeks and months to come. So, and this will be very similar in format to how Mr. Fueling has done this. It made sense to me. It didn't seem like a good time to reinvent the wheel. So things we're going to kind of go over. Budget timeline. We have a couple new board members, so we'll go over a couple of those things and just make sure everyone's familiar with when we do what we do. And then we'll talk about what we do or what we don't know. A little bit again for kind of some new board members and some review for everyone about the PCFP. And we'll go over some revenue assumptions, funding consideration, and expense assumptions. So budget timeline, we get our preliminary revenue projections from February 15th. And that's very, very preliminary because nothing's set in stone. Some years we have a pretty good feel, yeah, we don't think this will change much. Some years we get those numbers and we know that there's nothing on there that we're going to see the same number of when it comes time to use that. Since this is a legislative year, there is more volatility and seeing some change from those preliminary revenue projections. But we've had those for about a month now to kind of see what things we'll be looking at. March 25th, we'll get final revenue projections from taxation. And don't let the word final fool you. It still is subject to change up until the legislative session is over. And then, so once we have those, we can kind of actually put our preliminary budget together, our tentative budget. And you will see that more than likely that first board meeting in April. That is, again, an opportunity for discussion, nothing that you guys are approving, just a chance for you guys to get a first look at our budget in the same format that we would submit it to the Department of Taxation. And we can entertain any questions at that point in time and review things. And then we provide that to taxation basically so they can look at the organizations, public organizations that they oversee and make sure that something's happening on the budget front, that there's not any deficiencies there. That's really the sole purpose of that tentative budget and providing that to taxation at that point in time. Later on, the end of May, the third week of May, we have to have a budget hearing, a public hearing for that, and that will be a part of the board meeting on May 23rd. And that will be when you guys actually will see the final budget with any changes that we made before taxation, and that can be approved at that point. And then we submit that to the state. And then the close of this year's budget season, June 8th, is when our final budget is due to the state. And on June 5th is when the state's overall budget is approved by the legislature, and we'll actually know what those final numbers are. To give a little bit of time frame. Any questions up to this point?
Are you going to do like a version A and a version B?
Our
Because you only
forms,
have the 3 days, for.
I would not anticipate that we would change much unless there's something majorly drastic that comes out June 5th that's different than what the projections are. If it's very different, then we do have 30 days to submit an amended budget at that point. Or we can also, if it's not even something that's major, we can work those into our final amended budget that's due December 31st. So I didn't put that date on there because that's kind of the second half of the budget season for the year. In my 6 years of doing budgets and being involved with school district budgets, we've never amended one based off what came from the legislature, even though there were some differences that have come. All righty. So here's a quote that Mr. Fueling has shared. It's from Donald Rumsfeld, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we got like a celebrity to come and actually read this quote? He's not available. He's got kind of a permanent position that he couldn't make it tonight because he's passed on. But I do have the next best thing. Mr. Fueling is here in case he's like one of the foremost Nevada state school district budget authorities. And he's here to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer for you. So that's the best I could do since Mr. Rumfield has completed what he needed to do here. Anyhow, his quote, this is just going to kind of break down the categories of how we're going to describe the budget. He says there are known unknowns. These are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know. And that just kind of really sums up what preparing a budget this early is. So we're going to kind of take those in reverse order. We're going to start with the unknown unknowns, the knowns unknowns, and then the known unknown. We'll follow what the slides say. Oops. All righty. What's that? Yeah, I'll blame it on that. So, all right. Unknowns. Very, by their very nature, we wouldn't know what these are. So The legislation is in process. Again, that wraps up June 5th. Again, I started to prepare this slide presentation 2 weeks ago for our budget, or for our board meeting that was canceled. At that point, there were 44 bill draft requests that I had reviewed. Is 58 when I typed that number in there, I believe, which was Friday. And I think we're up to 68 or 70 now. So that number is going to continue to go. Each one of those present a potential fiscal impact to a school district. There are several that don't. There's some that do. There's some that will change things wildly that I don't think will ever pass. But those are a lot of the unknowns that we have. We just don't really know what that's going to be until it's done. Then finally there, I'm just going to say a little bit of humor is a good sign when you're talking about the budget, because that means it's not going to be all serious. But when will winter end? When will winter end? There's an unknown unknown. All right, our known unknowns. So these are things we kind of know a little bit about. We know that we're going to have to prep for them, but there's still some question marks and blanks that we'll need to fill in. First one of those is our average daily enrollment. We really aren't going to know what that is until probably about a month in the school years, where we're feeling pretty good about where that number is. So up until that time, we've got projections, we have studies that we have done for us, our collective knowledge as a district, a lot of things that we can kind of present our best projections for what that will be, but we really won't know what it is until long after our final budget has been submitted. A couple things we do know about that is our enrollment is gradually trending downward. We don't expect that to change throughout FY24. That decreased enrollment has to drop by 5% before hold harmless kicks in. We don't anticipate that decrease is going to hit that 5% threshold, so unlikely that we're going to qualify for an enrollment hold harmless based off what we're seeing, what our studies and everything are coming in as. Second thing is categorical funding. There's probably been, if you may have heard news that those are going to be fully funded this year. That's great news. They did move the goalpost much closer to make the field goal to achieve that this year. So there's been some things that have changed the way they calculate which students qualify for that. Ultimately, it is going to result in some additional funding for us. And all of that funding is directly going to go into some of those positions that we have in our ESSER funding. So it's going to kind of soften that. It's going to lower the drop off of that cliff when ESSER ends. Our special education funding, again, this is something that's subject to change. It's pretty well flat overall. We've got about a 1.9% increase, which is, by the time you factor in inflation, that's kind of moving backwards. More known unknowns. The one we probably know a little bit about is the state economic health. The outlook is very promising. Numbers and everything that we're seeing coming for that have been good news. One thing that's a little bit more, it's a known fact but creates an unknown for us, is our funding amounts are no longer guaranteed. When the state gives us the funding number on June 5th, if external factors, if the economy overall of the state changes and goes downward, then they will pull funds back. The PCFP did create a state education stabilization fund that is meant to offset that, and that's meant to kind of kick in to prevent drastic drops in school funding. And I believe that there are some funds that will be sent towards that to kind of start to build up that rainy day fund that the stabilization fund represents. And the final thing is it is late. Our contracts for our bargaining units expire June 30th, and so we don't know what the outcomes of those are, but we're going to build a budget around it. More known unknowns, inflation. It's taken a bite out of the budget like McGruff does on crime. Last year's CPI was that's the Consumer Price Index, which is kind of the most widely accepted inflation indicator, was 6.4%. There's varying things. If you take into account regionalities and remove things out of that, you can get that percentage to go down a couple points or up a couple points. 6.4% I think was probably most indicative of what's going on in our area. We don't know what that's going to look like for this year. Indicator that it's kind of flattening out, but it's not that 6.4% that went up last year doesn't magically go away. And the end of last week, we're getting some news from our utilities that we're going to be facing some increases for our natural gas and electricity costs starting April of this year. So that's another unknown that will definitely affect our budget, as those costs have been higher this year than last, and we're expecting additional increases there. More kind of on good news than on unknowns. Nutrition. our universal free meals are going to be continued through FY24. That's good news, as that's has gotten a little bit higher participation than we've had when that does not exist. The funding for that's kind of unknown. I think it'll probably look very similar to what this year has, where the feds will kick in part and the state will kick in the rest to 100% guarantee it. One thing we do know with that is those funds are only can be used for nutrition expenditures. They're considered a special revenue account and can't be transferred out to do other things. So they are earmarked for that only. Our budget will kind of reflect the universal free again. And one thing that we have happening is that there's discussions ongoing that might make that a permanent fixture in public schools. All right, the known knowns, this is an exact slide from last year. So this presentation that Mr. Fueling shared last year was these exact numbers. I just highlighted a couple things in blue there to point out. So we talked about the enrollment hold harmless. The PCFP is a different hold harmless. That's where we're kind of trapped in our FY20 numbers. And as of last year, projections where we would be stuck in hold harmless for 3 to 6 more years, depending on economic and various other factors. And then our FY23 per pupil amount, was $7,753. So this year, the same slide with a couple other facts, and I moved it back to the known unknowns category because there's some things we just don't know yet. The known knowns, we will have school next year and we will have winter next year. Those are 2 things you can count on. The PCFP hold harmless can almost taste the freedom from where I'm sitting. So even though we were 3 to 6 years away from that as of last year, the projections that state's given us will pull us out of hold harmless during FY24. So that means that we're going to see an increase above the revenues from the FY20 number. So that is extremely good news. Something that, a year from now, never would have thought that we would see that this soon. So that's great news, great indicator for our budget overall. And then just to compare FY23's per pupil fund to FY24's, FY24 is $9,233 per student.
So is it official that we're out of hold harmless or we're projected? Because that's 2 very different things, because if we're in hold harmless, it doesn't matter how much more money they put in education, we're getting what we had.
Mm-hmm. We
So
should see an
that's-
increase because we'll again, this is all based off the projections that we've been given. They're not final yet.
And I would add too, so based on the governor's budget and what has been shared with us now, there will be, well, and this is a part of ND's presentation as well, there will be 3 districts that remain in hold harmless, even with giving, if the governor's budget comes to fruition, and it really is $2 billion into the pot, Eureka, Story, and Esmeralda would be the 3 districts left in hold harmless. So I would say at this point, because this isn't a done deal in those terms, we are not guaranteed to get out of hold harmless, but it seems that the threshold of funding needed to get us out of hold harmless has been so significantly exceeded. I think it would be hard for me to imagine. So, and really what this ends up coming down to is on May 1st, the Economic Forum will release their economic projections going out through the biennium. The governor is using the Economic Forum projections right now from December 1st. So those May 1st numbers, when they get updated, those are the final numbers that the state has to use in terms of what they think they have available for their budget. So it could change. I mean, I don't know if you saw 2 days ago, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. And so like these horrible memories are coming back to me of about 15 years ago. So barring any significant economic downturn, I think it's pretty reasonable we'll be out of it.
Thank you. Yeah, that May 1st date's kind of when I have an optimism scale that's like 10 check boxes, and we're about to check box 6. So from the beginning of the year till now, from that December 1st number till now, we've kind of checked 6 boxes off. There's 4 more to go before I feel really good about saying, hey, I like this number.
Well, just off of what Trustee Waltz had asked, I think if we were teetering, we would need a plan B if we didn't get out of hold harmless, because that's significant. You know what I mean? That's a big difference in funding.
Yeah, that would definitely, I mean, if something's drastically changed, that's where we would see, we would be amending our budget after the close of the session. And again, that's just, it's a known unknown. It could be, we don't know yet. We're gonna go off the best information we have. This FY24 number is developed by NDE based off the governor's proposed budget. And like I say, it changes. It was $9,251 till this morning. I got an email this morning that had a slight adjustment in it. So that number could change. If it doesn't, I think that's a fantastic number that we're starting to see some investment in education to try and move things in the correct direction. Additional known unknowns, the weighted funding, these were created from the PCFP and funds that follow the students that they serve, are at risk. We're projected to get about a $75,000 increase there. GATE has kind of a negligible increase, and our English learners is, we're getting about 1.4 million this year. We'll get a 1.6 million to just slightly over double that. So that is great news. Again, that will directly offset positions that we have in ESSER funding that are set to expire with the ESSER funding. Our auxiliary funding for transportation and nutrition are very stable, a slight decrease actually, which nutrition is going to be self-sufficient with that universal free next year. The transportation is something that we'll be able to work with the funds that we're getting there as well. And we're not anticipating anything major different as far as the amount of funds that we've been transferring from general fund to special education. That'll be very similar to what it has been in the last couple of years. All right, any questions about that before we kind of talk about PCFP for a moment? Do we give Joe enough time to get the lag? I'll assume yes. All right, so here's just a little bit of, again, this was something that was kind of shared last year, but I wanted to share with you new board members as well. This is kind of what happened to the revenues as a result of the PCFP. The graph on the left was the old Nevada plan. We can see 70% of our revenues came from local revenues, 30% were from the state, and a few other negligible amounts, less than 1%. So the graph on the right represents the new numbers of the PCFP, which essentially took all those local revenues, it scrapes them from all 17 counties and puts them in one great big state education fund. And so rather than having that 70-30 split, or that would vary because each locality would have a different percentage than 70% that was unique to Carson City. Now they're all going to look about the same, where essentially 99% of that funding is going to come from the PCFP, the state education fund that was created by that. Easiest way for me to illustrate that is this next slide here. This is a snippet from our last year's financials. And if you look at, it's got 2022 compared side by side with 2021 of our revenues. And those colors are somewhat color coded to these graphs here, the blue and the green. You can see the general revenues that are indicated there by the red arrow. Our property taxes, we had 18.6 in 21. The only property tax number that remains in there is the amount that applies to our debt service that provides the funds for servicing our bonds. That stays, the rest of it goes to the state education fund. Local school support taxes, that's the LSST in the little formula there to the left. 100% of those go to that state education fund. BGST, that's the basic governmental services tax. A small amount of that remains for capital projects and building upkeep, that $800,000. The remainder of that goes into that state education fund. So if you'll kind of see those upper numbers on those three are much higher in 2021 and 2022, they're much lower. And everything is going to come, that 99% of our funding is going to come from that state education funding. So there's some niceties to it as it kind of makes things easier. But if you go back to look at historical data, this is just something to be aware of. You're going to see that shift between the years 2021 and 2022. All right, moving on to kind of some of the revenue assumptions for the things we're going to be using to building our budget. I've got a side-by-side comparison of FY23 and FY24. You can see our enrollment. I highlighted in red if it was going down, green if it was going up from 23. So we're estimating probably being about 75 students lower in next year than we are this year. And again, we're going to see some fluctuations with that, but we feel pretty comfortable with that number right now. The per pupil adjusted base amount, $9,233, up considerably from the $7,700 from last year. And that's going to make our adjusted base funding go from $56.5 million to $66.5 million. So our PCFP funding, our other one that's going to be our transportation, monies for special education, and our nutrition. We had 10.4 million last year. That's down about a 1.2 million to 9.2 million this year. So that did drop a little bit. You know, when you lump that overall with the adjusted base, no one's complaining about that right now, although it is kind of an interesting anomaly. And then those other funds that we have, about that 800,000, we don't anticipate much change there. So overall, we're looking about an increase about $8.9 million from FY23 in additional revenues based off of current projections, subject to change. With that additional revenue, these are some of the objectives and items that we need to consider. The first couple are things that we're already in. We need to kind of plan for our enrollment decrease. If we just continue on without making any changes for that could result in some poor fiscal management. And then also that fiscal cliff that is created by ESSERS, we need to transition some of those funds to offset that. Other things that we really would like to use that to consider on and things that we feel would be responsible. You know, there's a large part of me that says, hey, let's just shove this all into employee raises and start to get our salaries up where they need to be. Unfortunately, that's not the only thing we need to worry about. That does go hand in hand with staffing vacancies. That's two things that we would really like to consider and improve upon. Excuse me. However, we also need to, we might have some existing programs that, like our SR program, that might take some additional funding. You guys have seen some presentations on social work and our counselors, those kind of things that if we want to bolster what we're going to do there, that's going to take some of that funding. And then there may be some additional accountability items that come with the new funds as well that we're not aware of yet. It might be something where the governor or legislature is going to say, you're going to need to do this, this, and this with these dollars. So that's something we also need to plan for. And then also our strategic plan, we just need to consider that we want to meet the objectives that are in that. And then also just inflation, like I say, we're going to need to plan on additional operating costs. Incrementally, we're going to have to kind of increase those across the board to respond to the additional costs that we're seeing. A couple of expense assumptions just to make you aware of. Again, this is a negotiating year, so we won't know what those look like yet. For all of our employees to step, that costs us about $735,000. And then each 1% increase of salary costs roughly $660,000. That's a couple of numbers just kind of have in the back of your head. Our health insurance increase is going to be about 9%. That's going to be about $400,000 to keep that benefit the same as it has been. And then, of course, we are looking at 3.75% increase to PERS, which is directly about $1.9 million to keep that benefit exactly how it is. And of course, that's chosen for us already. Our other benefits, vision, dental, though, we're not expecting any real large increases there. They're pretty stable. Non-staffing expenses assumptions, we do need to kind of plan for some of those incremental costs that are happening due to inflation and just increased product costs across the board. Right now from the general fund, our SROs are costing us about $560,000 from the general fund. You know, if to keep that the same, that's that cost. To change, add increases there, there's additional expense there. And then our technology replacement cycle, next session of that's coming out of ESSER funds, that's about $600,000 for our next purchase of Chromebooks. Overall, kind of the bottom line, our intention would be to budget for our ending fund balance to stay the same. We don't have any reason to increase our ending fund balance right now. It's pretty healthy for our circumstances. And our intention would be to use the increased revenues to hit those objectives I pointed to 2 slides ago. And then again, for FY24, we've got about $5 million of expenses in ESSERS that exist that year but won't exist in future years. Any questions?
When you say 600,000 for Chromebooks, approximately how many Chromebooks are you buying? Because they're not very expensive. So I mean, because they have the 4-year timeline, correct? Unless they've changed that.
It is about 4 year. I think we're finding that to get 100%, 4 years out of 100% doesn't quite happen. We have some that have to be rotated out early. Someone here is really good at math can divide $600,000 by about 250. They give you ballpark what it would be.
I'm not going to do that math, but that's the cost we have been using for the replacement of 6th grade and 9th grade. So it's been those two grade levels, trying to do that annually.
And that's what I was wondering, if we're still doing like the 2 grade levels.
That's the goal, and that I guess we were hoping that would get individually addressed by the legislature, because they, through kind of their auditing, they've been trying to get a handle on how much districts, they were asking us a lot of questions about how much we were spending on those items, but nothing has come through through the session, at least at this point.
It's kind of, years ago when we were trying to figure out how we were going to sustain the one-to-one program and looking at budget deficits. And in my mind, I was like, well, we're just not going to be able to do that. And I think now we're in a position where we have to do that, because as we responded to COVID, it now is ingrained in what we're doing. And so it's kind of funny how fast things have changed. And it just changes our priorities and the necessity of things like computers and laptops, and it's interesting.
Do we have any other questions? Or go ahead.
Say something. So in 12 years of being involved in school district budgets, I've never had this problem before, where we apparently may have money and now it's, well, what are we going to do? And clearly, and I'm glad Spencer laid out, there's all these things we need to be thinking about. And I'm glad Bridget Gordon isn't here, because she probably would have hopped up on the table at this point. But really, I mean, if there's clearly a lot of needs in the district, be them programmatic or be them recognizing current employees, dealing with, funds that are positions in funds that those funds are going to go away. So we have to figure out ways to manage that. So it certainly, it appears if this works out, it's a good problem to have. I will say too that the numbers that have been provided, we know they are not correct, in that there's some, it was found after some of these numbers came out that there is some fine tuning that definitely still has to be done. But I don't, at this point, don't believe it's anything extremely significant. So that's why, again, we're using those numbers.
And the adjustment that affected us overall that we got this morning was about $160,000. I mean, overall, that we went from 9 million to 8.9 million in our estimate of what we would increase. I would expect some other kind of similar adjustments to that. We're not anticipating anything that would be major from that increase. And I neglected to mention at the beginning of this presentation that the budgeting really is, applying a finite resource of funds to infinite needs. And that was the same before we knew we'd be getting this kind of funds for this upcoming year. It's the same now. We still have a finite resource. There just happens to be more of it than we're used to seeing. But there's still infinite needs in a school district that we want to address the best that we can as. Yes, I second that motion if I may do so.
Trustee Walt, did you have a question?
So this is more about procedure on the budget as well, but for the timeline, so you bring us the assumptions, and then you'll bring us another time of it before we vote on it. When does the board get the opportunity to say, no, maybe I don't want this going in category A, I want it going in category B, where there might be a shift of where the funding is being allocated? At what point in that timeline?
Spencer, you want me to take that?
Well, since you volunteered, I was just trying to talk.
This will be kind of a regular item now at this point. I mean, this is your ability to kind of process, and think about some of these things. And there may be some follow-up questions that you have, and feel free to grill Spencer on any of those questions. But, in coming back next time, we can talk through some of those items that, you as a body, you have this strategic plan kind of, guiding the discussion. And so I think that that's really important in terms of trying to frame where maybe we would want to do some things within the district. I think you all know that we have needs in various places. So I think that will be a part of that discussion then as we come back next time. And I think it's important to, so with that tentative budget, there isn't much that frustrates the finance folks in school districts more than having to do the tentative budget, because it's just something we have to do. It's a compliance thing. But the reality is that we're working toward that last budget in May. Like that ultimately, that's the one that matters. But when we get some feedback, at the next meeting, we'll start putting something together. We'll put that tentative budget together. We'll keep talking about, every meeting really from here on out, we'll be talking budget.
I would say, Molly, that I feel like before we know it, we're going to be doing this next year. It feels like it's just an ongoing conversation that, I don't know. I feel like we've all been sitting here having the same exact conversation for years and years. So, it just kind of all blends together as we go forward. It's kind of a weird process.
Well, and I think this is the first year I can think of where we're not saying, hey, we're going to have a $5 million deficit. What is it that is the least harmful to kids to reduce? And so that to me is changing the whole feeling of it.
What I'd like to say is $8.9 million, it's a lot of money, no doubt about it, and hopefully we'll get that. But we have a lot of needs that need to be met with that $8.9 million. Raises, like you pointed out, several $1 million in just healthcare costs, PERS, et cetera. So there may not be as much money as some people may believe we have to work with just by covering the expenses. We don't know what the natural gas went up, I heard 20%. Is that right? Just that?
It's definitely a double-digit percentage increase, at least 20, I believe.
I think natural gas is what I've been told, but it's going up a lot.
So even before this increase, we are on pace between, we were just talking about this earlier, it's not double, but gas and electric are probably at least 50% higher than what we paid last year. It's like a $300,000 to $400,000 total increase in utility costs. So with this coming, it's a concern.
Thank you. And so what I haven't heard anything about, though, is the reserve fund. Is there one?
When you
Or
say
rainy day-
reserve
or
fund,
rainy day fund?
like that belongs to us as a district?
Yeah.
We have, our ending fund balance kind of acts as that. And so there's different schools of thought. The state really doesn't want us to have a balance that ends up higher than 16.6%, which calculates out to 2 months worth of operating expenses. GFOA, the Governor's Finance Officer Association, recommends that as the minimum. So we try and operate right around there. That kind of acts as a rainy day fund. And kind of one of the things of the PCFP is they are taking that away from districts separately and kind of managing it more at the state level. Because again, if our ending fund balance dips too low, then the state comes over, puts us on fiscal watch, and then they actually take over the district if we manage it poorly. And as part of that, the PCFP just kind of is taking some of that to where, hey, let's stick away, to where we have actually a year's worth of stuff. We could create other funds to cover some more of those things, but right now the majority of that is basically in our ending fund balance. That acts as our rainy day fund.
And
I feel like that's controversial because there's districts pushing back on how that's done, and there's a lot of questions about what that looks like. And so I think that it's hard to ask Spencer or AJ because I think, like at the state board level, there's multiple districts that are like, what does this mean? And why are you taking this? Like districts have had all their funds swept and struggled with payroll and stuff.
if I could, just in really practical terms, there definitely is a reserve. There's this ending fund balance that exists. It's currently, I think, 13 million-ish in our general fund. Sorry, it is the language that has come with the PCFP on this ending fund balance sweep, and that money will be taken from. So this last year, 4 districts had money taken from them because their ending fund balances were not the right number. It is unbelievably complicated, and now there's been this new Senate bill, I think it's 124. It's like the fastest passage of any bill I have ever seen. I think it was heard once on the floor, and it was passed by everyone, and the governor already signed it. It's done. And it now is changing the rules again on how this is calculated. And quite honestly, we don't really fully understand it yet. We've been talking with Ryan Russell. Maybe we'll pull in Mr. Pavlakis into the conversation, trying to figure that out. But it appears that it may have changed for the better, but we have some work to do there. So I don't mean to complicate it more, but it is one of the most complicated things that came out of this PCFP change.
Yeah, it's based on 2-year-old legislation that really hasn't been tested yet, that there's people that don't like it and people that don't understand it, and now there's already new legislation to change it. And I think we're going to see that for probably another couple of legislative sessions as it kind of gets fine-tuned and tweaked, and hopefully in the right direction of how it needs to go to best serve Nevada's students.
Do you have any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank
Spencer,
you.
We'll be seeing you pretty much every meeting from here on out. Looking at the time for agenda item 13, I am willing to table this so that we can have a discussion when we're more awake. So if that would be something, we don't need to take a motion to table it, but we can just bring this back at another. Okay, even when it says for discussion only? Okay, so we can still do a motion to table it. If
I
anybody-
move, you ready?
Yep.
I move to table agenda item number 13.
Second.
Motion and second. Do we have any further discussion on the board? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. The motion carries. It is tabled for another. Agenda item 14, approval of consent agenda for possible action.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? Do we have any board discussion? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And agenda item 15 is informational items for discussion only. No action will be taken. And we already heard about the kindergarten registration. And Choir Palooza is this Thursday, and Bandorama is March 23rd. You might want to mark your calendars for those events. Any questions on that agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 16, requests for future agenda topics. Have any tonight? Agenda topics. Have any tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to item 17, and we are adjourned before 10 o'clock, which is still pretty good. Thanks, you guys.